Chapter 3755. When Zhuowen returned to his residence, he saw Tang Hongmiao standing outside his courtyard anxiously. After Tang Hongmiao saw Zhuowen, he hurriedly walked forward, and his face was filled with anxiety as he said, "Brother Zhuo, the situation is bad." "What's wrong?" Zhuowen asked in surprise. Tang Hongmiao sighed and said, "Brother Zhuowen, ever since you beat up Nicai, I went to check on her brother's information and found out that her brother's name is Niju. He's ranked 5th in the inner sect and his cultivation has reached the heaven-trampling change. His strength is extremely terrifying. Moreover, Niju has already sent out a message. In 3 days, he will come out of seclusion and challenge you to a duel in the life and death ring. This is the letter of challenge that he just sent over." As he spoke, Tang Hongmiao passed the letter of challenge to Zhuowen. Although the competition in the Ascension sect was intense, disciples were allowed to fight with each other. However, they were not allowed to kill each other. That was the rule. However, there were also some enemies who were allowed to fight to the death in the life and death ring. On the life and death ring, one would fight to the death. Niju had invited Zhuowen to the life and death ring to kill him. "Brother Zhuowen, Niju is too powerful. You can't really go to the life and death ring. As long as you don't accept this letter of challenge, even if Niju is an inner sect disciple, he won't be able to kill you in the sect," Tang Hongmiao advised. Zhuowen smiled and took the letter of challenge from Tang Hongmiao. He then wrote his name on the letter of challenge. Brother Zhuowen, you." Tang Hongmiao was in disbelief. "I'll accept this letter of challenge. In 3 days, on the life and death ring, I want Niju's life." In Niju's residence, both of Niju's hands were wrapped in some kind of black ointment and her face was extremely gloomy. Her brother, Niju, had invited the best pharmacist in the Ascension sect. However, he informed her that her hands were too badly damaged and she would need at least 3 months to fully recover. In other words, she would not be able to cultivate in these 3 months and could only stare blankly like a fool. "Zhuowen, you bastard. If you don't die, I won't be able to rest in peace." Nicai gnashed her teeth. She hated Zhuowen to the core and wished that she could make Zhuowen die in front of her. Creak. The door to her room was pushed open and Furong rushed in. "Senior sister Nicai. Zhuowen accepted the challenge," Hibiscus said excitedly. Nicai's eyes lit up as she revealed a vicious smile. "Haha, he's really overestimating himself. He actually accepted the challenge. My brother will definitely kill him." Furong hurriedly chimed in, "Of course. With senior brother Niju's strength, he's ranked at the top of the inner court, let alone Zhuowen who's merely an outer court disciple." 3 days later, big brother Niju would come out of seclusion, and that would be the death of this bastard. At that time, we'll just have to watch a good show. Nicai snorted coldly. Furong also revealed a vicious smile. She recalled how Zhuowen had scared her to the point of wetting her pants. Even now, she felt ashamed and wished that Zhuowen would die without a burial ground. On the 2nd day, Zhuowen went to the crater again. He planned to pass through the second group of craters today and obtain a proof token to enter the second level of the ability pavilion. When he entered the passageway that led to the crater again, he met the old man in the stone room again. The old man slowly opened his eyes and sized up Zhuowen. He said indifferently, "Not bad. Yesterday, you passed the first group of craters on your first visit. Are you going to cultivate in the first group of craters today?" Zhuowen shook his head and said, "Senior, I want to enter the second group of craters." The old man slowly narrowed his eyes and said in a deep voice, "You said you want to enter the second group of craters? I have to remind you that the pressure in the second group of craters is much stronger than the first group." "Yes, I originally planned to enter the second group of craters today and obtain a proof token. I want to get the proof token from you, right?" Zhuowen said with a faint smile. The old man looked deeply at Zhuowen and said expressionlessly, "You really know how to talk. I just don't know if your strength is really as strong as you think. The second passageway on the left leads to the second group of craters. Go in." Zhuowen cupped his fists towards the old man and entered the second passageway on the left. "Sigh, are all outer sect disciples so arrogant now?" The old man watched Zhuowen disappear into the passageway and couldn't help but shake his head. Zhuowen walked out of the passageway and once again arrived at the vast crater. He discovered that he was at the other side of the crater today. On his left was the first group of craters from yesterday. On his right, closer to the center of the crater, this should be the second group of craters. When Zhuowen jumped into the first crater, a terrifying pressure surged into his body like a tide. Although Zhuowen was prepared, he still staggered and almost lost his footing. What a powerful pressure! The pressure in the first crater of the second group is even stronger than the pressure in the 9th crater of the first group. On the other hand, the primal chaos energy is really dense. Zhuowen's eyes revealed excitement. According to the amount of primal chaos energy here, he should be able to advance to the spirit transformation intermediate stage in less than a month. Ever since he advanced to the spirit transformation intermediate stage, Zhuowen discovered that his need for primal chaos energy had increased exponentially. If he wanted to advance to the spirit transformation intermediate stage, the amount of primal chaos energy he needed was even more terrifying than when he advanced to the spirit transformation intermediate stage. If he cultivated normally, Zhuowen knew that he would need to spend a lot of energy and time to advance. However, the Ascension sect had this crater, which was enough to shorten his cultivation time. Let's head straight to the 9th crater. Zhuowen's eyes were like lightning as he took large strides forward. When he entered the 7th crater, the surrounding pressure seemed to have materialized. Zhuowen's footsteps also became messy and heavy. Zhuowen took a deep breath and started to circulate the immemorial primordial technique. Instantly, his entire body was enveloped by a mysterious purple energy. His footsteps became strong and powerful once again. Boom! When Zhuowen entered the 8th crater, Zhuowen's eyes narrowed as he saw a figure. It was a beautiful young lady. Her skin was white, her nose was straight, and her face was delicate. When Zhuowen entered the crater, the young lady slowly opened her eyes. She sized up Zhuowen. When she saw that Zhuowen was wearing the outer court disciple's uniform, her eyes were filled with shock. However, she did not plan to talk to Zhuowen. Instead, she closed her eyes and continued to cultivate. Zhuowen glanced at the young lady and did not plan to speak to her. Instead, he continued to rush towards the 9th crater. Bang! 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 The pressure in the 9th crater was extremely terrifying. When it crushed onto Zhuowen's body, it produced terrifying explosive sounds. Zhuowen frowned his brows. He had to circulate the immemorial primordial technique in the 9th crater. Otherwise, he would definitely suffer from internal injuries from the pressure. However, Zhuowen was gratified by the fact that the primal chaos energy here was extremely powerful. He estimated that he would be able to break through to the spirit transformation intermediate stage in less than half a month if he cultivated here. He found a secluded corner and started to cultivate peacefully. Although the pressure here was extremely terrifying and forced Zhuowen to circulate the immemorial primordial technique at all times, it was extremely difficult. Chapter 3756. After half a day, Zhuowen sensed that someone had entered the 9th crater. He slowly opened his eyes and saw that the beautiful woman he met in the 8th crater had landed in the 9th crater. You actually stayed in the 9th crater for half a day? The woman looked at Zhuowen with surprise in her beautiful eyes and spoke for the first time. She knew very well how terrifying the pressure in the 9th crater was. Even she could only cultivate here for 8 hours, but this guy could stay for half a day, which was beyond her expectations. I was just lucky. Zhuowen replied calmly. My name is Zhong Xinyan. Are you really an outer disciple? The woman took the initiative to report her name. Zhuowen nodded and said, Yes, my name is Zhuanyanxue. After that, Zhuowen closed his eyes again and did not intend to continue the conversation with the woman. Zhong Xinyan was quite tactful. Seeing that Zhuowen had resumed his cultivation, she found a random spot and began to cultivate as well. After 8 hours, Zhong Xinyan slowly opened her eyes. Her forehead was covered in cold sweat, her face was pale, and her delicate body was trembling. 8 hours was already her limit. If she continued, her body would not be able to withstand the pressure here. When she looked at Zhuowen, She was surprised to find that Zhuowen was still sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed. His breathing was calm, and he did not seem to be unable to hold on. Is this guy a monster? Seeing that Zhuowen was still persevering, Zhong Xinyan gritted her teeth and closed her eyes again to continue her cultivation. After an hour, Zhong Xinyan's body was drenched in sweat, revealing her seductive figure. She spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground, trembling violently. Damn it! I've reached my limit. I can't walk anymore. I'll take out my identity token and activate the teleportation array to leave this place first. Zhong Xinyan was helpless. She could not even move now. She had to leave, or she would really die here. But when she touched her waist, she found that it was empty. She had forgotten to bring her identity token today. It's over. Zhong Xinyan suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground, completely unconscious. Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes. He looked at the sky and realized that night was about to fall. He stood up with a smile on his face. The primal chaos energy here was very dense and was very suitable for him to cultivate. According to his current speed, he would probably be able to break through to the spirit transformation intermediate stage in 10 days. Just as Zhuowen was about to leave, he noticed Zhong Xinyan lying on the ground with a weak aura. He was stunned. Zhong Xinyan had already reached her limit. Why hadn't she left yet? Zhuowen came to Zhong Xinyan's side and found that the latter had fainted. Her aura was extremely weak, and she was on the verge of death. Looks like it's not an act, Zhuowen thought for a while. Then, he carried Zhong Xinyan on his shoulder and jumped out of the 9th pit. When he returned to the stone room, he placed Zhong Xinyan to the side and walked in front of the old man. Senior, I've passed through the second group of sinkholes. I've passed through more than 10 sinkholes. I should be able to obtain a proof token now, right? Zhuowen said calmly. The old man sized up Zhuowen and straightforwardly took out a token and handed it to Zhuowen. This is the proof token. With this, you can enter the second level of the Mystical Abilities Pavilion. After Zhuowen received the proof token, he cupped his hands towards the old man and left without looking back. The old man looked at Zhong Xinyan, who was lying on the ground, and Zhuowen, who had decisively left. He opened his mouth and wanted to ask Zhuowen if he wanted to take Zhong Xinyan away. However, Zhuowen left too quickly and disappeared in the blink of an eye. This child isn't simple. Is he really an outer disciple? Even Zhong Xinyan, who was ranked second in the inner court, was in such a miserable state. Yet, this fellow acted as if nothing had happened and even carried Zhong Xinyan out. The old man's eyes emitted an unbearable light as he muttered to himself. It seems that the Ascension sect is no longer as strong as before. They didn't even discover such a genius. But, it's fine. I'll keep an eye on such a genius. Don't tell anyone else first, lest other sects covet him. After he finished speaking, the old man noticed that Zhong Xinyan had woken up. Zhong Xinyan's eyes were filled with confusion. She looked around and rubbed her head. She said in pain, "Where is this? Wasn't I in the 9th pit of the second group?" "Hey, senior, it's you. I've already left the sinkhole." Zhong Xinyan saw the old man and immediately sobered up. She exclaimed in surprise. "Zhong Xinyan, you're safe now. This time, it's all thanks to Zhuowen. Otherwise, you might have really died in the sinkhole," the old man said indifferently. "Zhuowen? Senior, are you talking about that outer disciple?" Zhong Xinyan recalled the outer disciple she met in the 9th pit. She still remembered that the fellow cultivated in the 9th pit for half a day with ease. In other words, it was that outer disciple who brought her out of the sinkhole. When the sun rose the next day, Zhuowen went to the Divine Abilities Pavilion early in the morning. "Elder Lian Yu, this is the proof token. I can enter the second level now, right?" Zhuowen handed the token he obtained from the old man to the manager of the Divine Abilities Pavilion, Lian Yu. "What? You actually went through the first 2 groups of sinkholes?" Lian Yu took the proof token and was in disbelief. She knew that the sinkhole was divided into groups of 9. In order to obtain a proof token, an outer disciple had to go through the first 2 groups of sinkholes. Inner disciple, on the other hand, could activate the teleportation array after entering the 10th pit because of the identity token. Lian Yu looked at the back of the figure walking toward the second level of the Divine Abilities Pavilion. Her beautiful eyes were filled with curiosity and interest. This outer disciple was not simple. It had only been a few days, and he had already obtained a proof token. This was something that even inner disciple could not do. After Zhuowen entered the second level of the Divine Abilities Pavilion, he realized that there were significantly fewer Divine Abilities manuals on the second level. Moreover, there were also significantly fewer disciples. Only inner disciple and above could enter the second level of the Divine Abilities Pavilion. Therefore, those who could enter were basically inner disciple. There was not a single outer disciple in sight. When Zhuowen entered the second level, he immediately attracted their attention. Zhuowen did not care about the strange gazes of the other inner disciple. Instead, he took the time to browse through the various divine abilities on the second level. There were about 500 to 600 divine abilities manuals here. Basically, all of them were level 2 divine abilities. Zhuowen even found an incomplete level 3 divine ability in a corner. This was the only incomplete level 3 divine ability. It was called Bright Snow Spear. It was severely incomplete. Only the first half was left. When Zhuowen picked up the Bright Snow Shackling Spear, the supreme word stone in his divine soul instantly reacted. The purple energy materialized into a figure holding a spear. The figure began to dance continuously. When the figure finished practicing the first half of the Bright Snow Spear, not only did it not stop, but it continued to practice the spear art. Furthermore, its spear art became more and more exquisite and terrifying. Chapter 3757. When Zhuowen finished digesting all the divine abilities on the second floor of the Divine Abilities Pavilion, his primordial soldier mantra and primordial movement technique had both reached the peak of rank 3. In the Ascension sect, divine abilities of this level were considered important scriptures. It was difficult for inner disciples to learn them, and only core disciples could come into contact with them. Of course, if one had enough contribution points, even outer disciples could exchange for divine abilities of this level. However, the required contribution points were extremely terrifying, and it was definitely not something an ordinary cultivator could achieve. In addition, in the dangerous trial of the crater, after proving oneself, one could enter the corresponding floor of the Divine Abilities Pavilion and borrow the divine abilities of the corresponding level. Zhuowen looked up and realized that it was getting late, so he was ready to leave the Divine Abilities Pavilion. When he walked out of the Divine Abilities Pavilion, he found Tang Hongmiao curled up outside. Beside Tang Hongmiao stood a young man with an overbearing bearing. Looking at his clothes, he should be an inner disciple. "Brother Tang, what's the matter?" Zhuowen walked forward and greeted Tang Hongmiao. Brother Zhuo." Tang Hongmiao looked at the young man beside him with fear, and he stopped talking. "You're Zhuanyan Xue? You don't look special, but senior brother Ni Ju personally issued a challenge to you. Where did you get the face to accept senior brother Ni Ju's challenge? A piece of trash like you isn't qualified to fight with senior brother Ni Ju." The young man's eyes were filled with arrogance as he walked out and blocked Zhuowen's path. The entrance of the Divine Abilities Pavilion was originally a place filled with people, and there were many disciples. When the young man blocked Zhuowen and wanted to find fault with him, many disciples stopped to watch the show. Even the Divine Abilities Pavilion's manager, Lian Yu, leaned against the door and watched with interest. It's inner disciple Yong Hu. His second only to the top 10 inner disciples. In terms of strength, his ranked 11th in the inner sec. Why would such an expert suddenly block an outer disciple? Didn't you hear Yong Hu's name? His name is Zhuanyan Xue. Wasn't there a rumor that Ni Ju issued a death challenge to an outer disciple? That outer disciple's name is Zhuanyan Xue. F***CK, are you serious? Ni Ju was an expert who was ranked 5th in the inner sect's top 10. Why would he issue a challenge to an outer sect disciple? Isn't this like using a sledgehammer to kill a chicken? The surrounding people were discussing incessantly. They looked at Zhuowen with eyes that were filled with realization, curiosity, pity, and disdain. "You're saying that you want to fight me on Ni Ju's behalf?" Zhuoan asked indifferently. Replace Niju? You think too highly of yourself. I came here to cripple your limbs, and when the deathmatch starts tomorrow, I'll personally kill you. Why would I need senior brother Niju to do it? Yonghu said with disdain. I have no enmity with you, but you're going to kill me for Niju just because I offended him? Zhuoan squinted his eyes as his killing intent blazed. He. You're just an outer disciple. If it weren't for the sect's rules, I would have killed you right here and now. Yonghu sneered. Alright, I've wasted too much time talking to you. I'll break your limbs first before we talk. Yonghu snorted coldly. Just as he was about to attack, a beautiful figure blocked his way. Yonghu, this is the Divine Abilities Pavilion. Don't mess around. If you insist on making a move, don't blame me for being impolite. This was an extremely beautiful young woman. Although she was wearing loose and simple sect clothes, it still couldn't hide her seductive figure. Zhong Xinyan? You. Why are you here? The moment Yonghu saw this female disciple, his expression changed, and his eyes were filled with fear. Zhuoan also looked at the woman in front of him in surprise. Wasn't she Zhong Xinyan who was unconscious in the crater yesterday? He was the one who carried her out and saved her life. This is the Divine Abilities Pavilion. Why can't I be here? Zhong Xinyan said indifferently. Yonghu said with an unfriendly expression, Zhong Xinyan, I'm not causing trouble in the Divine Abilities Pavilion, but outside the pavilion. The sect doesn't have a rule that forbids sparring outside the Divine Abilities Pavilion. Could it be that you've taken a fancy to this kid and are here to help him? After saying this, even Yonghu himself couldn't believe it. Zhong Xinyan was ranked second among the top 10 inner sect disciples. She was also very beautiful and had many suitors in the sect. Yonghu had fantasized about Zhong Xinyan before, but Zhong Xinyan's personality was cold and she rejected all of her suitors. He knew that the number 1 inner sect genius, Cha Long, had been rejected by Zhong Xinyan before. How could she take a fancy to a mere outer sect trash? Yes, I'm here to help him. If you really want to deal with him, then I'll have to make a move. As Zhong Xinyan spoke, she slowly pulled out the blue divine sword from her waist. Instantly, the sword intent spread out like ripples, and the surrounding air instantly became much colder. Yonghu's expression finally changed. He knew that Zhong Xinyan was serious. She really planned to make a move. Timpy. You only know how to hide behind a woman. Niju will come out tomorrow. Since you've already accepted the life and death challenge, remember to come to the life and death arena. If you don't dare to come, break your arms and beg for forgiveness. Senior brother Niju will be soft-hearted and spare your worthless life. After Yonghu finished speaking, he left hatefully. On the other hand, the surrounding crowd was in an uproar. They all looked at Zhuoan with strange gazes. Zhong Xinyan's reputation in the Ascension sect was too great. She was a famous beauty and her talent was extremely high. She was the goddess in the hearts of many male cultivators. Zhong Xinyan, who had always been cold, actually stood up for a mere outer sect disciple at this moment. They were truly shocked. Are you meddling in other people's business? I can easily deal with this kind of trash. You coming out is just an unnecessary move. Zhuoan shook his head. He didn't have any intention of expressing his gratitude. He walked past Zhong Xinyan and walked to Tang Hongmiao's side. Is there something wrong with this guy's head? Senior sister Zhong saved his life, and this guy actually pretended to be virtuous. He even said that he was meddling in other people's business. He's really giving advice after the fact. Damn it, this trash is really showing off. I want to beat him to death. He really took advantage of me and now he's pretending to be innocent. Many of the surrounding male disciples were filled with indignation. They felt that Zhuoan really didn't understand the situation and still made sarcastic remarks. Zhong Xinyan's beautiful eyes looked at Zhuoan with a complicated expression. She recalled Zhuoan's heaven-defying performance in the crater and sighed softly. I was impulsive this time. Zhuanyanxue, I apologize to you. At this moment, many of the surrounding male disciples who didn't know what was going on were confused. What's going on? Zhong Xinyan kindly saved Zhuanyanxue, But not only did Zhuan Yanxue not appreciate it, she even made sarcastic remarks. What made them even more confused was that Zhong Xinyan actually lowered her head and apologized to Zhuan Yanxue. What was going on? Chapter 3758. Brother Zhuo, that's Zhong Xinyan, the number 2 genius of the inner sect. She's both beautiful and powerful. She's publicly acknowledged as the number 1 beauty in the Ascension sect. She's already helped you so much, yet you're still so cold to her. Don't you think you're going overboard? Tang Hongmiao probed carefully on the way. Tang Hongmiao's attitude towards Zhuowen was becoming more and more cautious. The more he interacted with Zhuowen, the more he found Zhuowen to be unfathomable. Therefore, his attitude towards Zhuowen was no longer that of a friend. Instead, it was more like the attitude of a subordinate towards a superior. Zhuowen had long noticed the difference in Tang Hongmiao's attitude towards him, but he didn't say anything. She's more of a hindrance. If she didn't make a move, the one crippled would be Yonghu. Zhuowen said calmly. Tang Hongmiao's eyes flickered. In fact, he felt that Zhuowen was boasting. Although Zhuowen's performance in the Golem Cave was very good, and he even dealt with Nicai and Zhu Ji, who were among the top 10 outer sect disciples, they were still outer sect disciples after all. He knew that there was a huge gap in strength between outer sect disciples and inner sect disciples. Take Yonghu for example. His cultivation was already at the late stage of the heaven-trampling change realm, and he could defeat both Zhu Ji and Nicai with one hand. Since Tang Hongmiao had never seen Zhuowen fight with an inner sect disciple, he guessed that Zhuowen was only at the level of an ordinary inner sect disciple. There was still a gap between him and Yonghu, let alone Niju, who was stronger than Yonghu. Zhuowen naturally saw through Tang Hongmiao's thoughts. He smiled faintly and said, "Brother Tang, you don't have to worry too much. The ones who should be afraid of tomorrow's battle should be Niju and the others." Tang Hongmiao forced a smile, but he was getting more and more worried. Zhuowen didn't try to comfort him. After tomorrow, Tang Hongmiao would truly understand his strength. As night fell, Zhuowen stayed in his residence without sleep. He was digesting the various divine abilities that he had fused in the Divine Abilities Pavilion today. Although these divine abilities were fused with the primordial soldier mantra and the primordial movement technique, Zhuowen himself had thoroughly comprehended them. He could use all the divine abilities at his fingertips. Of course, the might of these divine abilities was definitely far inferior to the Grand Mist weapon formula and Grand Mist movement technique. The next day, at dawn, someone kicked open Zhuowen's door. Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes and found that the person who had come was Eternal Tiger, who had provoked him yesterday. "Trash, why haven't you come out yet? Senior brother Niju is waiting for you in the life and death arena." Yonghu sneered. Zhuowen slowly stood up. When his cold gaze landed on Yonghu, the latter's body couldn't help but stiffen. By the time Yonghu reacted, Zhuowen had already arrived beside him at some point. "Why aren't you leading the way?" Zhuowen's cold voice came slowly. Yonghu's pupils shrank. He hadn't noticed when Zhuowen had arrived beside him. This guy, Yonghu's hair stood on end. He realized that he had underestimated this person's strength. "I say, why aren't you leading the way?" Zhuowen spoke once again. A terrifying and overbearing aura burst out from his body and surged toward Yonghu like a tide. Plop! Yonghu sat on the ground. He was completely frightened by this aura. You. Yonghu swallowed his saliva. The fear in his heart could no longer be concealed. Although Zhuowen's cultivation was only at the spirit transformation stage, his strength was much stronger than Yonghu's. Furthermore, he had been training in the heavenly pit for the past few days. Thus, his body was releasing the terrifying pressure of the heavenly pit. "I don't like to repeat myself 3 times. Zhuowen spoke once again. Yonghu finally came back to his senses. He quickly stood up and obediently led the way. Brother Zhuo, you must be careful." Tang Hongmiao also walked out of his room. When he saw Yonghu bringing Zhuowen out, he spoke with a complicated gaze. "Brother Tang, follow me to the life and death arena." Zhuowen lightly smiled. Tang Hongmiao nodded and immediately agreed. He followed closely behind Zhuowen. Along the way, Zhuowen and Tang Hongmiao chatted casually. However, Yonghu, who was leading the way, did not say a word. If one looked carefully, they would be able to see that Yonghu's body was faintly trembling, as if he was afraid of something. The journey to the life and death arena was extremely long for Yonghu. The life and death arena was located at the top of Tianju Cliff in the Ascension sect. Tianju Cliff was also a training ground for the Ascension sect. Furthermore, this place was much more popular than the Heavenly Pit. The main reason was that the difficulty of the Tianju Cliff's training was moderate. It was not as difficult as the Heavenly Pit, where it was easy to lose one's life. Therefore, most of the Ascension sect's disciples chose to train at Tianju Cliff. At this moment, Tianju Cliff was even more popular than before. This was because today was a special day. Someone was going to fight in the life and death arena. Although the life and death arena was set up on Tianju Cliff, very few people would fight in the life and death arena. After all, there were only a few disciples who had a life and death grudge. Once someone fought in the life and death arena, it would attract many disciples to watch. At the top of the cliff, on the life and death arena, Niju sat cross-legged on a rock with his eyes closed. On his legs, there was a divine sword quietly lying on the ground. This is the first time in 3 years that someone is going to the life and death arena. Furthermore, one of them is the inner sect's 5th strongest expert, Niju. This is really rare. Isn't that so? I also heard that Niju's opponent is only an outer sect disciple. There's really no suspense in this battle. That outer sect disciple is really unlucky. He actually offended Niju. This time, he's dead for sure. Many disciples around Tianju Cliff were discussing animatedly. They all had a pitiful attitude towards the outer sect disciple who had yet to appear. He could have offended anyone, but he actually offended one of the inner sect's top 10 experts, Niju. Hee. With big brother Niju here, that Xuanyensua will die even if she doesn't. Nicai's arms were wrapped in bandages as she hid on a rock wall around Tianju Cliff. Beside her were Furong and Liu Yongwang. As Wei Yi's injuries were too severe, he was still lying on the sickbed. This Xuanyensua is overestimating herself. She really did accept the life and death challenge. Does she really think that she can compete with the 10 great inner sect disciples just because she defeated us? She's really looking at the sky from the bottom of a well. Furong echoed. Liu Yongwang's eyes were filled with arrogance as he said, "What a pity. Originally, I was willing to personally deal with that arrogant Xuanyensua for junior sister Nicai. However, senior brother Niju was still one step ahead of me. It's not good for me to compete with senior brother Niju for this limelight." Nicai's beautiful eyes revealed a strange light as she looked at Liu Yongwang and said, "Senior brother Liu is right. With your Dao root, you will definitely be an influential figure in the Ascension sect in the future. Senior brother Liu, you don't have to trouble yourself to deal with a small fry like Xuanyensua." Liu Yongwang's Dao root was of a higher level than Niju's. He was extremely talented. After entering the inner sect, he received the attention of many elders. Nicai heard all this from Niju. Therefore, she was trying her best to curry favor with Liu Yongwang. After all, Liu Yongwang's achievements in the future would definitely be above her brother's. Liu Yongwang faintly smiled as his eyes revealed a pleased expression. However, he didn't take a few more glances at Nicai. Instead, he focused most of his attention on a beautiful figure not far away from Tianju Cliff. That figure attracted the attention of many male disciples at Tianju Cliff. She was the inner sect's number 2 genius, Zhong Xinyan. Niju slowly opened his eyes and looked down at the only path below Tianju Cliff. Chapter 3759. When Zhuowen and the other two arrived in front of the life and death stage, Niju slowly stood up. He did not notice the unnatural expression on Yonghu's face as he focused all of his attention on Zhuowen. Especially when he saw that Zhuowen's aura was only in the spirit transformation stage, a trace of disdain flashed in his eyes. Although this kind of cultivation was considered strong among the outer disciples, it was only ordinary among the inner disciples, not to mention Niju. I'm very surprised by your courage. Considering the huge gap between you and me, I told Yonghu to tell you, right? Break your arms and come here to apologize. Then, I will consider letting you live. Right now, this condition is still valid. Niju's voice wasn't loud, but it was filled with an unquestionable arrogance. Senior brother Niju is truly benevolent. He actually intends to let this person go. Break my arms? If Xuanyuanxue really did that, then he would be crippled and wouldn't be able to stay in the Ascension sect anymore. But a bad life is better than a good death. I believe that Xuanyuanxue will agree to this condition. Many disciples around the heavenly precipice heard Niju's words and started to discuss with ridicule in their eyes. They were all waiting to see Xuanyuanxue make a fool of herself. Zhong Xinyan silently watched all of this. After hearing Niju's words, she gently shook her head. She was well aware of Zhuowen's strength. Even she might not be his opponent, not to mention Niju. In Zhong Xinyan's opinion, Zhuowen's strength should be comparable to a core disciple. Zhuowen's gaze was calm as he stepped onto the life and death stage and said indifferently, I only need one move to deal with trash like you. There's no need for me to apologize to you. As soon as he said those words, the surrounding noise instantly stopped. Strange gazes were cast onto Zhuowen's body. Those gazes were filled with doubt and pity. Immediately after, everyone roared with laughter. They felt that Zhuowen's words were simply too laughable. There should be a limit to boasting, right? Niju laughed out loud, but his eyes turned even colder as he said, You've got guts. You actually dare to boast in front of me. Are you tired of living? Before Niju could finish his sentence, his voice stopped abruptly as Zhuowen disappeared in front of him. By the time he reacted, Zhuowen had already appeared in front of him, and a sharp pain came from his chest. Zhuowen's right hand clenched into a fist. His entire body was emitting a strange purple light, and it landed right on his chest. Poochie. Niju spat out a mouthful of blood and flew backward like a falling leaf. Zhuowen, on the other hand, stood where he was. His entire body was shrouded in a strange purple light. What was even more strange was that there were illusory images of weapons floating around his body. The moment Niju was thrown out, the illusory images of weapons around him shot out like arrows and blasted into Niju's body. Niju was still in midair, and he was still in a daze. When the illusory images of weapons landed on his body, a bloody mist burst out. The intense pain caused him to shriek miserably. When Niju's shriek came to an abrupt end, his body exploded and turned into a rain of blood that sprinkled on the top of Chenjue Cliff and the Life and Death Ring. The entire area around Heavenly Precipice Cliff was silent. It was so quiet that it was too strange. All the spectating disciples stood there motionless, as if time had stopped. They quietly watched all of this, watching this unbelievable scene. Niju, the genius disciple who was ranked 5th in the inner sect, was defeated in one move. Moreover, his body and soul were destroyed. He couldn't be more dead. So powerful. Zhong Xinyan stared blankly at the scene and couldn't help but mutter to herself. She had already thought that she had overestimated Xuanyuanxue's strength, but now she realized that she had underestimated her by a long way. Nicai, Furong, and Liu Yongwang froze on the spot as if they had been possessed. The three of them couldn't accept such an outcome at all. How could Xuanyuanxue be so powerful? She was too powerful. Yonghu, who was standing not far away from the Life and Death Ring, was already paralyzed on the ground. His body was trembling and even moving was difficult for him. He felt deep regret and fear. He actually wanted to find trouble with this jinx and cripple his limbs. Wasn't he digging his own grave? Fortunately, Zhong Xinyan stopped him. Otherwise, his current situation wouldn't be any better than Niju's. Brother Zhuo, is he really Brother Zhuo? How did he become so powerful? Tang Hongmiao was stunned on the spot. He looked at the figure standing quietly on the Life and Death Ring with a complicated gaze. Zhuo Wen's eyes lit up. He had just used the primordial soldier formula. He had killed Niju, who was at the advanced stage of the heaven-trampling change realm, without even using its full power. If he used its full power, he might be able to fight against an early-stage void god transformation realm cultivator. Moreover, the primordial soldier formula was far from its peak. It was only at the peak of the third rank. When it evolved in the future, its power would be even more terrifying. At this moment, Zhuo Wen gave him a strange feeling. It was as if he was suffocating. Ah! Brother Niju, no, Zhuanyanxue, you bastard. How dare you kill Brother Niju? He was an inner disciple. You killed an inner disciple. This is a capital offense. Death. Nicai seemed to have lost her mind as she pounced on the life and death ring. She had completely collapsed and lost all rationality. The only thought left in her mind was to avenge Niju. Furong and Liu Yongwang didn't even have time to react before Nicai had already jumped onto the life and death ring. Once you're on the life and death ring, your life is in my hands. Zhuo Wen's gaze was terrifyingly calm as he watched Nicai pounce on him. He then flicked his finger and a purple energy shot out. It shot out like a bullet and hit Nicai between her eyebrows. Fart. Nicai was like a kite with a broken string as she flew out and smashed into the ground below the life and death ring. Blood spurted out from between her eyebrows. Her face was pale and she was on the verge of death. It was obvious that she wouldn't live for long. This person is so powerful and decisive. Many disciples at the heavenly cliff looked at Zhuo Wen with fear in their eyes. They had already labeled him as a dangerous person that they couldn't afford to offend. Chapter 3760. Yong, who was so scared that he almost suffocated. His eyes were wide open as he stared at Zhuo Wen. He knelt on the ground decisively and begged for mercy. Senior brother Zhuo Wen, Yong who knows his mistake. It was Yong who did not recognize Mount Tai yesterday. Please spare Yong whose dog life. All right. I'll give you a chance to live. Now get on the life and death ring. I'll only cripple one of your arms and then get out of here. Zhuo Wen said calmly. He had never been someone who would settle things peacefully. Yong who had provoked him time and time again, so he would not treat it as if nothing had happened. Those who humiliate others will be humiliated by others. Yong whose eyes flickered and he began to hesitate. Zhuo Wen's condition was too much. As an inner disciple who was second only to the top 10 experts, how could he be humiliated like this? Then cripple both of your arms and get out of here. Zhuo Wen saw that Yong who was hesitating and spoke again. His voice was filled with unquestionable authority. Yong who panicked. He knew that he could not hesitate anymore. Thus, under everyone's gaze, he rolled out of the ring and onto the ring. The disciples of Tianju Cliff were dumbfounded. This was Yong Hu. He had always been overbearing and ruthless towards others. He had never backed down. But today, under this person's order, he actually rolled onto the life and death ring. Zhuo Wen did not speak anymore and only looked at Yong Hu indifferently. Feeling Zhuo Wen's gaze, Yong Hu shouted loudly. In front of everyone, he channeled his broken divine power and destroyed the meridians in his hands. Poochie. Yong Hu's arms burst out into a bloody mist. Then, Yong Hu screamed and fell to the ground. His body was twitching. Now, you can get out of here. Zhuo Wen said calmly. Yong Hu's eyes were filled with humiliation, but he still obediently followed Zhuo Wen's request and rolled down the life and death ring. Then, he left Tianju Cliff in a panic. At this moment, he was too embarrassed. How could he have the face to continue staying? Zhuo Wen stood on the life and death ring. His gaze casually swept and landed on Liu Yongwang and Furong. Liu Yongwang and Furong were both shocked. Their foreheads were full of sweat. The person in front of them was a fearless person. Even Niju and Nicai had died in his hands, so they didn't dare to provoke him. Plop. Liu Yongwang hurriedly pulled Furong to kneel on the ground and said loudly, Senior Zhuo, during the entrance test, we were rude to you. Please don't take it to heart. We apologize to you now. Zhuo Wen silently watched Liu Yongxiong and Furong's actions. After a while, he slowly opened his mouth and said, The person you should be apologizing to isn't me, but Brother Tang. Liu Yongwang reacted very quickly. He pulled Furong towards Tang Hongmiao, knelt on the ground, and apologized in a low voice. Tang Hongmiao's gaze was complicated. He waved his hand, not intending to pursue Liu Yongwang's rude behavior. He was very clear that Liu Yong's willingness to apologize to him was not sincere. It was only because he was afraid of Zhuowen's power. Zhuowen surveyed the surroundings of Tianju Cliff, and all the disciples who met his gaze all lowered their heads, not daring to look him in the eye. "Brother Tang, let's go." After scanning the surroundings, Zhuowen jumped down from the life and death arena. Under the respectful gazes of the crowd, he brought Tang Hongmiao and left Tianju Cliff openly. What a terrifying guy. This guy can't even be considered an outer court disciple. If he said he was a core disciple, there would be people who would believe him. Zhong Xinyan looked at Zhuowen's departing figure with a complicated expression as she muttered to herself. Tang Hongmiao silently followed behind Zhuowen, not saying a word the entire way. "Brother Tang, do you know why Yong, who was willing to listen to my orders and roll onto the life and death arena to break his own arms and roll off? And why did Liu Yongwang and Furong kneel down and apologize to me because of my gaze?" Zhuowen did not even turn his head as he asked indifferently. Tang Hongmiao raised his head and stared at Zhuowen's back. After pondering for a moment, he said, "Because you're stronger than them." "Yes, you're right. I'm stronger than them, so I'm their rule. When you're strong enough, you'll be able to control the rules. Imperceptibly, there will be people who will get close to you, follow you, and even fear you. I know you feel inferior because my strength is stronger than yours. You don't even know how to get along with me, however, you just need to know one thing. You're my friend. This is the primordial technique. Take it and cultivate it. It will be the opportunity for you to quickly become stronger." Zhuowen stopped, took out a jade slip, and passed it to Tang Hongmiao. Recorded within the jade slip was the primordial technique that Zhuowen had created by referring to the primordial technique when he was in the lower realms. The might of the primordial technique was indeed far inferior to the original primordial technique. But it was much stronger than many cultivation techniques. Moreover, this cultivation technique did not have a requirement of Dao root. Even if one did not have Dao root, they could still cultivate it. Tang Hongmiao's Dao root was very inferior, so his progress in cultivating the Ascension sect's cultivation technique was very slow. He might not be able to break through the heavens in his lifetime. But the primordial technique was different. Cultivating this cultivation technique could rapidly increase one's comprehension ability. The more one cultivated it, the faster one's cultivation speed would be. It was an extremely terrifying cultivation technique. Of course, Zhuowen didn't give the primordial technique to Tang Hongmiao out of sympathy or any other emotions. It was also for the purpose of experimenting. He wanted to experiment and see if the primordial technique was suitable for others besides him to cultivate. Was it true that the worse one's Dao root was, the easier it would be to cultivate this cultivation technique? If it was true, then wouldn't it mean that mortals without Dao root would be the best choice to cultivate the primordial technique? If it was true, then perhaps the plan in Zhuowen's heart could be carried out. It was a plan that could truly allow him to gain a foothold in the outer realms and swiftly spread his forces. Because mortals were the most numerous in the outer realms, and they far outnumbered cultivators. Once the primordial technique could be cultivated by mortals, then Zhuowen would have the foundation to rope in all the mortals and establish a powerful force. And once this plan was realized, the entire structure of the outer realms would probably be broken by Zhuowen. Time gradually passed, and in the blink of an eye, 2 months had already passed. In these 2 months, Zhuowen had passed through the 4th group's sinkhole, and his cultivation had advanced to the peak of the spirit transformation stage. He was only half a step away from advancing to the heaven-trampling transformation stage. He had also successfully obtained the 2nd proof token and entered the 3rd level of the Mystical Abilities Pavilion. Moreover, he had integrated all the mystical abilities on the 3rd level into the primordial soldier mantra and primordial technique. This allowed the 2 mystical abilities to advance again and reach the peak of the 4th stage. Their power could be said to be extremely terrifying. Originally, Zhuowen thought that passing through the 4th group's sinkhole would definitely attract the attention of the sect's upper echelons. However, to Zhuowen's surprise, there was no movement from the sect. He vaguely guessed that it might have something to do with the old man guarding the sinkhole. It should be that the old man had concealed what happened in the sinkhole for him. As for what the old man's motive was, Zhuowen did not know. On the contrary, the old man's attitude towards him became more and more amiable, and he spoke more and more. Even the administrator of the Mystical Abilities Pavilion, Lian Yu, who had always had a bad attitude, had changed her attitude towards Zhuowen. To be more precise, she valued Zhuowen more. However, Zhuowen did not think too much about it. He had been immersed in his cultivation state, and it felt as if he did not pay attention to what was happening outside. Chapter 3761. The arrival of the Nangong family and the Murong family had shaken the entire Ascension sect. Regardless of whether it was the outer disciples, inner disciples, or core disciples, all of them were discussing the news. Zhuowen, on the other hand, was still cultivating in the sinkhole. He was trying to break through to the heaven transformation stage. Furthermore, he did not pay attention to gossip and was not good at socializing. Therefore, he was not aware of the news. Of course, even if he knew, he would not care. Although he knew that the Nangong family and the Murong family had come for him, unfortunately, he had entered the Ascension sect under an alias. Even if the Nangong family and the Murong family wanted him, the Ascension sect would not be able to find a disciple by the name of Zhuowen. On the main peak of the Ascension sect, the sect leader, Li Yuanfeng, had gathered the elders to discuss countermeasures. Sect leader, the Murong family and the Nangong family have sent people here at the same time. It seems that the two families have discussed this beforehand. Furthermore, I heard that the Murong family's leader is Elder Yingyang while the Nangong family's leader is Nangong Haoge. I'm afraid that they've come with ill intentions. An elder stood up. His gaze was unpleasant as he spoke in a deep voice. Since this elder had started the discussion, the other elders present began to discuss spiritedly and expressed their opinions. Li Yuanfeng gestured for them to keep quiet and sighed softly. The Murong family and the Nangong family have sent people here because of a disciple of our Ascension sect. It's said that this disciple is audacious and has stolen the star weapon fragments from the two families. In order to avoid being hunted down by the two families, he hid in our Ascension sect. The crowd burst into an uproar when they heard this. What? No wonder the two families have mobilized so many people. So they're here to catch a thief. This thief is really despicable. He actually hid in our Ascension sect. Sect leader, we can't let this guy off so easily. The elders present all had different opinions, but their thoughts were the same. They had to find that thief and stop him from slandering the Ascension Gate. After all, both the Nangong family and the Murong family were not inferior to the Ascension sect in terms of power and foundation. In fact, they were even slightly stronger. Now that the two families had joined forces, the higher-ups of the Ascension sect were panicking. After all, the Ascension sect was no match for the power of the two families. Thus, when they learned that the two clans had joined hands and did not come to target the Ascension School, they heaved a sigh of relief in their hearts. By the way, Sect Master, who are the people the two clans want? Someone's words immediately attracted everyone's attention. This person's problem was also their problem. From the messages that Elder Yingyang and Nangong Haoge sent me, I heard that this person's name is Zhuowen. This is his profile picture. If you know this person, report it to me immediately. As Li Yuanfeng spoke, he took out a crystal ball and projected a clear image on it. The figure of a young man with a calm expression was displayed on the virtual image. The gazes of all the elders fell on the projection. Only one person's expression changed slightly when he heard Zhuowen's name, and a strange look appeared in his eyes. She was Elder Yuqi. Back in Yunjin Ridge, she had competed with Zhuowen and lost to Zhuowen. That Zhuowen actually has an astral weapon fragment in his hands. Who exactly is he? Elder Yuqi pondered in her heart and was filled with curiosity about Zhuowen's identity. Back then, Zhuowen had used the half-moon divine fire spear to defeat her in the end. He was clearly only in the divine transformation of the fetus realm, but he could possess a level 4 heaven-breaking divine weapon. Moreover, he could use such a divine weapon beyond his level. It was truly unbelievable. After she brought Lu Miaozhen away, she had actually asked Lu Miaozhen about Zhuowen's background. According to Lu Miaozhen, Zhuowen had just come from the lower realm and was saved by her. He was unfamiliar with the 100 domains outside the lower realm. As for more information, Lu Miaozhen was not too sure. However, Elder Yuqi guessed that Zhuowen did not come from the lower realm. This person's background was definitely not simple. Moreover, he was so bold that he dared to steal the astral weapon fragments from the Murong and Nangong families. How could a living being from the lower realm have such courage and strength? From Elder Yuqi's point of view, it should be an excuse made up by Zhuowen. That Zhuowen has the token that I gave him. If he really comes to the Ascension sect, he will definitely bring my token to report. However, I haven't received any news during this period of time. I'm afraid that Zhuowen is not in the Ascension sect. Elder Yuqi's eyes flickered. She did not intend to provide this information to Li Yuanfeng. Although Zhuowen's attitude was not very good back then and he had even defeated her, she did not have a good impression of him. However, her impression of Zhuowen was not bad. At least, Zhuowen knew how to repay kindness. He was even more courteous to Lu Miaozhen, who had saved his life. From Elder Yuqi's point of view, since Zhuowen was not in the Ascension sect, the people from the Murong and Nangong families would naturally not make things difficult for the Ascension sect. When the time came, they would naturally leave. 3 days later, 2 giant divine ships soared through the sky and arrived near the Sky Dragon mountain range where the Ascension sect was located. Elder Yin-Yang, I heard that when you led people to encircle and annihilate that Zhuowen last time, you were covered in dust and dirt and almost died. That was truly humiliating. At the front of the Nangong family's divine ship's deck, a tall middle-aged man clad in armor had his hands crossed in front of his chest. He cast a sidelong glance at an old man who was similarly standing at the front of the divine ship's deck and spoke in an ambiguous tone. This middle-aged man was naturally the leader of the Nangong family's team, Nangong Haoge. As for the old man at the front of the Murong family's divine ship's deck, he was naturally Elder Yin-Yang, who had failed to encircle and annihilate Zhuowen last time. Elder Yin-Yang's face darkened. He coldly said, Nangong Haoge, no one will treat you as a mute if you don't speak. If you were to face the might of a rank 2 astral weapon fragment, would you be able to remain unscathed? Nangong Haoge coldly smiled and said, I'm not like you. Our Nangong family has already made preparations to deal with that brat. If we want to deal with a rank 2 astral weapon, we can only use a rank 2 astral weapon. Elder Yin-Yang coldly snorted and said, do you think that only your Nangong family can take out a rank 2 astral weapon? Our Murong family has also made preparations for this. Also, our mission this time is to bring back that Zhuowen. As for the things on this person's body, how about our 2 families decide the ownership according to the old rules? Nangong Haoge grinned and said, There's nothing we can do about it. After all, our family's patriarch has already reached an agreement with your Murong family. Nangong Haoge also understood that if they were both rank 2 astral weapons, it wouldn't be a simple matter to quickly determine the victor. However, if 2 rank 2 astral weapons were to deal with 1 rank 2 astral weapon, then they would basically win. They had already anticipated that after Zhuowen's whereabouts were exposed, they would definitely fight to the death. If any of them were to face him alone, they would inevitably have to fight bitterly. However, if the 2 of them were to join hands, it wouldn't be a problem at all. Elder Yin-Yang, if the Ascension sect were to know that Zhuowen possesses a rank 2 astral weapon, do you think they would make a move to snatch him? Nangong Haoge asked with a frown. The message they sent to the Ascension sect's patriarch mentioned that Zhuowen possessed a rank 1 astral weapon fragment, but it was only a rank 1 astral weapon fragment. The Ascension sect also possessed a few rank 1 astral weapon fragments. Therefore, the Ascension sect wouldn't take the risk of offending the 2 families and monopolize Zhuowen. Chapter 3762. Although the Ascension sect was one of the 5 sects, it was ranked last among the 5 sects. It did not have a rank 2 astral weapon fragment. If they knew that Zhuowen had a rank 2 astral weapon fragment, they would definitely snatch it even if they had to fall out with the 2 sects. Haha, the Ascension sect wouldn't dare to do that. They don't have a rank 2 astral weapon. So what if they snatch this rank 2 astral weapon? Can he withstand the wrath of our two sects? Moreover, if the Ascension sect really snatches it, it will give our two sects an excuse to fight the Ascension sect. As long as Li Yuanfeng isn't a fool, he won't attack even if he knows that Zhuowen has a rank 2 astral weapon fragment. Elder Yin-Yang smiled faintly. That's true. Nangong Haoge said faintly. At this moment, the clouds surrounding the Ascension sect gradually dispersed, revealing the magnificent mountain gate of the Ascension sect. Elder Yin-Yang and Nangong Haoge knew that the Ascension sect had removed the protective mountain array after knowing of their arrival. A group of people walked out from the mountain gate of the Ascension sect. The person in the lead was naturally the sect master of the Ascension sect, Li Yuanfeng. Brother Yin-Yang, Brother Haoge, sorry to keep you waiting. Please come in. Li Yuanfeng made an inviting gesture to the two of them. Elder Yin-Yang and Nangong Haoge kept the divine ship and followed Li Yuanfeng into the Ascension sect with their respective teams. Along the way, many disciples of the Ascension sect observed this group of people from afar. They knew that only the Murong family and Nangong family could make Li Yuanfeng personally come out to welcome them. Sect Master Li, it has been many years since we last met. Your cultivation has improved again. Elder Yin-Yang started to chat with Li Yuanfeng. He sensed Li Yuanfeng's aura and realized that it was even stronger than his. His gaze immediately turned serious. Haha, Brother Yin-Yang, you are too polite. Your improvement is the greatest. My improvement is still a little lacking compared to yours, Li Yuanfeng said with a smile. Nangong Haoge was a little impatient. He said softly, Sect Master Li, you should know why we are here, right? We have come here to ask for someone. May I know if there is someone called Zhuowen in your Ascension sect? Li Yuanfeng was a little embarrassed. When the two patriarchs sent me the message, I immediately ordered the elders to investigate the names of everyone in the sect. I'm really sorry, but we didn't find anyone called Zhuowen in the sect. Elder Yin-Yang and Nangong Haoge exchanged glances, their expressions not looking too good. Sect leader Li, both of our sects have already investigated. Back then, Zhuowen did indeed come for your Ascension sect. Moreover, ever since he entered your Ascension sect, that Zhuowen has never appeared anywhere else. Sect leader Li, is it because you didn't investigate carefully enough, causing the results to be a little off? Elder Yin-Yang said with a smile. Li Yuanfeng frowned slightly. He was a little displeased. From his point of view, it wasn't a big deal that Zhuowen had stolen a rank 1 astral weapon from the Murong family and Nangong family. Weren't the people that the two sects had arranged a little too much? He had indeed sent people to investigate carefully. There was no such person as Zhuowen. However, these two people actually didn't believe him and even questioned him. They didn't put him, the sect leader, in their eyes at all. Elder Yin-Yang, I, Li Yuanfeng, will definitely not be careless about the things that your two sects have requested of me. If you still don't believe me, I can't do anything about it. Li Yuanfeng's tone was a little cold. Elder Yin-Yang and Nangong Haoge exchanged glances. Nangong Haoge secretly transmitted his voice. From Li Yuanfeng's tone, it doesn't seem like he's lying. Could it be that Zhuowen really isn't in the Ascension sect? Elder Yin-Yang said in a deep voice, that's not very possible. When that Zhuowen entered the Ascension sect, the Nangong family sent out many people to monitor him. No one saw that Zhuowen left the Ascension sect. Furthermore, before coming, I had already asked Spirit Master Yang to make a prediction. That Zhuowen is indeed still in the Ascension sect. Nangong Haoge nodded and said, I also asked Spirit Master Yang to make a prediction. That Zhuowen is indeed still in the Ascension sect. Could it be that this Li Yuanfeng really dares to lie to us? Li Yuanfeng wouldn't go so far as to offend our two sects for one person. Right now, the most likely thing should be that Zhuowen has entered the Ascension sect, but is using another identity. Elder Yin-Yang said. Nangong Haoge narrowed his eyes and said with a slight headache, if that's the case, then it's really troublesome. There are so many people in the Ascension sect. How are we going to find that Zhuowen if he sneaks in? Elder Yin-Yang slightly raised the corner of his mouth and said, we don't need to find him. That Zhuowen will take the initiative to find us. Nangong Haoge looked at Elder Yin-yang in astonishment and asked, "What do you mean?" "I've already understood. That Zhuoan killed Murong Fuge and Murong Rui consecutively for the sake of Yunjin territory. It can be seen that he's a righteous person, and in the Ascension sect, there's a benefactor who saved his life. As long as we have that person in our hands, then release the news. That Zhuoan will definitely do something." Elder Yin-yang smiled faintly and said. Nangong Haoge said with some disbelief, "Is there really such a person in this world? That guy is really willing to give up his life for the sake of friendship." Elder Yin-yang smiled and said, "Even if that guy doesn't dare to come, he'll definitely give himself away. At that time, with Li Yuanfeng's assistance, we can also find out who the real Zhuoan is." "Isn't this killing two birds with one stone?" Nangong Haoge nodded and felt that Elder Ingyen's plan was not bad. "Then who is that Zhuoan's benefactor that you mentioned?" Nangong Haoge asked. "I only know that she's called Lu Miaozhen. She's an inner sect disciple who just joined the Ascension sect not long ago. It's said that she even has the spiritual water root." At this point, Elder Ingyen's eyes revealed a strange brilliance. Nangong Haoge also revealed a strange expression and muttered to himself, "It's actually the spiritual water root. Looks like our luck is not bad." When Li Yuanfeng brought Elder Yin-yang and Nangong Haoge into the main peak's guest hall, Elder Yin-yang stood up and cupped his fists towards Li Yuanfeng. "Sect Master Li, since your Ascension sect doesn't have a person called Zhuoan, then forget it. However, we still have a condition. We still want to ask for a person from your Ascension sect." Li Yuanfeng frowned slightly and said with extreme displeasure, "Who is it?" Although his Ascension sect couldn't be compared to the two great aristocratic families, it was still one of the 5 great sects. These two people had already made Li Yuanfeng unhappy when they came up to ask for a person. Now that the person they wanted hadn't been found and they actually wanted another person, this was a little too much. However, when Li Yuanfeng considered the strength of the Nangong and Murong families, he still suppressed this anger. "Your Ascension sect has an inner sect disciple called Lu Miaozhen, right? We want this person," Nangong Haoge said calmly. When these words came out, Li Yuanfeng frowned and couldn't help but cast his gaze towards Elder Yuqi, who was in a corner not far away from the guest hall. The other elders' actions were also surprisingly consistent and they all looked towards Elder Yuqi. Chapter 3763. Elder Yuqi, who had been sitting quietly in the corner of the parlor, stood up abruptly when she heard Nangong Haoge calling for her disciple, Lu Miaozhen. Elder Yin-yang glanced coldly at Elder Yuqi and said indifferently, "Sect Master Li, is there a problem? You should know that both of our families have come with sincerity. This time, we've taken out a heaven-breaking rank 3 divine artifact as a thank you gift. I don't think Sect Master Li will reject us just like that. Let's go outside." In the parlor, many elders were moved. There weren't many heaven-breaking rank 3 divine artifacts in their Ascension sect. They could be said to be extremely precious. The Nangong family and the Murong family each took out a heaven-breaking rank 3 divine artifact. Their value far exceeded that of an inner disciple. "Sect Master, I think Elder Yin-yang and the Murong brothers must have their reasons for calling out the person they want. Although Lu Miaozhen is a disciple of our Ascension sect, I'm afraid that she has done some sneaky things before coming here. Otherwise, Elder Yin-yang and the Murong brothers wouldn't want her." "Yes. 7th Elder is right. Lu Miaozhen is definitely not a good person. I suggest that we expel her from the Ascension sect and let Elder Yin-yang and the Murong brothers deal with her themselves." Immediately, all the elders spoke up and agreed to hand over Lu Miaozhen. In front of the temptation of 2 heaven-breaking rank 3 divine artifacts, they chose to sacrifice their disciple without hesitation. Elder Yuqi looked at this scene in disbelief. None of these senior and junior brothers who had worked with her for many years were standing on her side at this moment. In order to curry favor with Elder Yin-yang and Murong Haoge, they unscrupulously sold out her disciple. "Sect Master, Miaozhen is my disciple and also a disciple of the Ascension sect." Elder Yuqi looked at Li Yuanfeng with a pleading look in her beautiful eyes. She knew that all of this was in Li Yuanfeng's hands. As long as Li Yuanfeng rejected Elder Yingyang and Murong Haoge, Lu Miaozhen's fate could be changed. Li Yuanfeng didn't even look at Elder Yuqi. Instead, he chatted cheerfully with Elder Yingyang and Murong Haoge. I see the sincerity of the two of you. I will order someone to bring Lu Miaozhen here. Li Yuanfeng said with a faint smile. Elder Yuqi's pupils shrank. Her face was filled with disbelief as she stared blankly at Li Yuanfeng. At this moment, she felt that the sect master that she had always respected seemed to have changed into another person. He was so unfamiliar and cold. Yuqi, Lu Miaozhen is your disciple. Go and bring her here now. Li Yuanfeng instructed Elder Yuqi indifferently. Elder Yuqi lowered her head and remained silent for a while. Then, she sighed dejectedly and said, Sect Master, I understand. I'll bring Miaozhen over right now. As she spoke, Elder Yuqi left the guest hall without even bidding farewell. In order to prevent junior sister Yuqi from being swayed by her emotions, First Elder, go and supervise her. Don't make any mistakes. Li Yuanfeng said to an old man sitting next to him. The old man nodded, stood up, and disappeared from his seat. Waterdrop Peak was Elder Yuqi's cultivation peak. In the Ascension Gate, all the elders who had some strength would have their own cultivation mountain. On Waterdrop Peak, in a rather luxurious courtyard, a young girl dressed in white sat cross-legged on a praying mat. As the young girl breathed, the surrounding water element suddenly became denser. It was as if countless invisible water vapor were rapidly evaporating into the air. Soon, an illusory tide was formed in the sky. Miaozhen is about to break through again. In the corner of the courtyard, an old man silently watched the young girl in white sitting cross-legged as she cultivated. The old man was Medicine Master Lu, and the young girl in white was Medicine Master Lu's granddaughter, Lu Miaozhen. After Elder Yuqi brought the two of them back to the Ascension sect, they immediately stayed on Waterdrop Peak. Lu Miaozhen's talent was so strong that it exceeded Elder Yuqi's expectations. In the short span of a few months, Lu Miaozhen had continuously broken through. She had broken through from the third blight to the peak of the fifth blight in one go. Now, Lu Miaozhen had entered a state of enlightenment. She was about to break through again and attempt to break through the heavens. Medicine Master Lu's gaze was extremely solemn. Although he was only a mortal, he knew how terrifying a heaven-crushing tribulation was. If Lu Miaozhen broke through now, the heaven-crushing tribulation would directly descend on Waterdrop Peak. At that time, all the disciples on Waterdrop Peak would suffer. Just as Medicine Master Lu was faintly worried, Lu Miaozhen slowly opened her eyes. Miaozhen, how are you? I thought you were about to break through immediately. Seeing Lu Miaozhen open her eyes, Medicine Master Lu hurried forward and inquired about her well-being. Lu Miaozhen smiled faintly and said, Grandfather, if I wanted to break through just now, I could have done so immediately. However, I considered that this is Waterdrop Peak. If I broke through like this and attracted the heaven-crushing tribulation, Waterdrop Peak would probably suffer heavy losses. So, I suppressed my aura. Medicine Master Lu said worriedly, this won't affect your future cultivation, right? Lu Miaozhen shook her head. Then, she looked up into the distance and said, Grandfather, Master has returned. Medicine Master Lu looked up. Sure enough, a long streak of light swept over from the sky and landed in their courtyard in the blink of an eye. They looked over and saw that it was Elder Yuqi. Miaozhen, Elder Lu, these are the tokens that allow you to enter and leave the sect. Take these tokens and leave the Ascension sect immediately. The further the better. Don't ever return to the Ascension sect again. Elder Yuqi handed a token to Lu Miaozhen and Medicine Master Lu as she spoke rather anxiously. Lu Miaozhen instinctively took the token. She asked in a daze, Master, what's wrong? Why are you telling us to flee? The Nangong and Murong clans are here. They specifically said that they want you. If you fall into their hands, you'll suffer a fate worse than death. Leave quickly, Elder Yuqi said in a low voice. Lu Miaozhen and Medicine Master Lu were shocked. They had heard that the Nangong and Murong clans were here, but they didn't know the true objective of the two clans. But now, they were actually here for Lu Miaozhen. But how was that possible? Lu Miaozhen had nothing to do with the two clans at all. The person they're really looking for is Zhuowen, but they couldn't find Zhuowen in the Ascension sect. So, they've set their sights on you. They want to use you to lure Zhuowen out. If you didn't have the spiritual water root, perhaps you'd be fine, but you do. If you fall into their hands, what will happen to you? I don't need to say more, Elder Yuchi said with a solemn gaze. Lu Miaozhen's face instantly turned extremely pale. She muttered to herself, how did it become like this? The Nangong and Murong clans were the four great clans of the Ji province's prefecture overseer. Whether it was in terms of background or power, they were not inferior to the Ascension sect. In fact, they were even slightly stronger. There's no time to explain it to you now. Leave quickly, Elder Yuchi said rather anxiously. At that moment, a terrifying aura surged in the sky above Waterdrop Peak. Chapter 3764. Grand Elder. Lu Miaozhen looked at the old man in the sky, and her face turned pale. This was the Grand Elder of the Ascension sect. His strength was second only to the sect leader, Li Yuanfeng. Even her master, Elder Yuchi, was no match for him. Elder Yuchi's expression changed drastically. She did not expect the Grand Elder to return. Did the sect leader send you here? Elder Yuchi asked in a trembling voice. The Grand Elder nodded and said, yes, the sect leader is worried about you going back alone. That's why he sent me here to supervise you. Junior Sister Yuchi, don't go down the wrong path. Hand Lu Miaozhen over. I will pretend I didn't see what happened today. Elder Yuchi smiled bitterly and said, Miaozhen is my disciple. As a master, how can I hand my disciple over to suffer? Then are you stubbornly refusing to come to your senses? Then don't blame me for taking action. The Grand Elder snorted coldly and stopped talking nonsense with Elder Yuchi. He reached out his right hand and grabbed at Lu Miaozhen. Bang! However, the moment the Grand Elder's right hand touched Lu Miaozhen, it was hit by a powerful force and exploded. Elder Yuchi held the blue divine sword in her hand and stood in front of Lu Miaozhen. Junior Sister Yuchi, you are really stubborn. Since that's the case, I will take you down as well. The Grand Elder was enraged. He did not hold back and slammed his palm down. The sky above the Waterdrop Peak changed color. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. It was as if doomsday had arrived. In the crater, Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes. He raised his head and looked in the direction of the Waterdrop Peak. He felt a powerful battle aura there. Zhuowen was very familiar with this aura. It was the aura of a Void God Transformation Realm Master. There was no doubt that there were two Void God Transformation Realm Masters fighting in the direction of the Ascension sect. That is still the territory of the Ascension sect. The Void God Transformation Realm Masters should be elders. Why are there people fighting in the sect? Zhuowen frowned. However, he did not think too much about it. His cultivation had already reached the peak of the Spirit Transformation Realm. He had been trying to break through to the Heaven Trampling Transformation Realm. The Heaven Trampling Transformation was the third transformation of the Heaven Crushing 9 transformations. If Zhuowen could successfully advance to the Heaven Trampling Transformation stage, then he would be able to walk through the air. This would make battle a lot more convenient. During this period of time, he had also made it to the fourth group of sinkholes. Now, he was cultivating in the 9th small pit of the fourth group of sinkholes. The chaotic energy here was much denser than the previous 3 groups of sinkholes. Zhuowen's cultivation speed here was extremely fast. He believed that he would be able to break through very soon. Zhuowen no longer paid attention to the battle waves from the Waterdrop Peak. Instead, he closed his eyes again. He had a premonition that he would be able to smoothly break through to the Heaven Trampling Transformation today. As long as he advanced to the Heaven Trampling Change Realm, his strength would undergo an earth-shattering transformation. On Waterdrop Peak, Elder Yuchi was lying on the ground with wounds all over her body. The luxurious courtyard on the peak had long since been reduced to ruins. The Great Elder silently looked at the heavily injured Elder Yuchi and said indifferently, "Junior Yuchi, The difference between the early and late nihility god transformation stage is huge. You are not my opponent at all. Since we're from the same sect, I'll spare your life. I'll take this Lu Miaozhen away. As he said that, the great elder opened his right hand and lifted Lu Miaozhen across the air, taking to the air. No, Miaozhen, Miaozhen, Apothecary Lu knelt on the ground, tears streaming down his old face. He was just a mortal and could not do anything. He could only watch as Lu Miaozhen was taken away. Elder Yuchi's eyes were filled with disappointment. She knew that this was all caused by her uselessness. In the main peak's reception hall, Nangong Haoge and Elder Yingyang were somewhat impatient from waiting. Just as they were about to speak, Li Yuanfeng spoke first. Both of you, Lu Miaozhen has been brought here. As soon as Li Yuanfeng finished speaking, the great elder strode into the reception hall. After he put down Lu Miaozhen in his hand, he said respectfully to Li Yuanfeng, Sect Master, Lu Miaozhen has been brought here. Thank you for your hard work, great elder. Li Yuanfeng nodded and immediately looked at Lu Miaozhen. Lu Miaozhen was dressed in white. Her face was pale and she looked delicate and weak. A trace of tears faintly flashed across her cheeks. Her eyes were also red and swollen. Lu Miaozhen, why aren't you kneeling when you see the sect master? The great elder snorted coldly and exerted his domineering pressure. Lu Miaozhen's body trembled. She involuntarily knelt on the ground with her head lowered and did not say a word. Miaozhen. The Nangong family and the Murong family are more powerful forces than the Ascension sect. They have taken a fancy to your potential and plan to take you away so that you can receive better training. Are you willing to go with them? Of course, you can rest assured that the Ascension sect will take good care of your grandfather. After you leave the Ascension sect, you don't have to worry about your grandfather. Li Yuanfeng smiled kindly and said gently. Lu Miaozhen originally wanted to refuse, but when she heard Li Yuanfeng mention Apothecary Lu, her whole body trembled. In the end, she nodded and agreed. She was not a fool. Li Yuanfeng deliberately mentioned Apothecary Lu to threaten her. If she did not cooperate, Apothecary Lu's life would be in danger. Haha, Miaozhen, you are indeed a good disciple of the Ascension sect. When you achieve meteoric success in the future, don't forget the sect's kindness in nurturing you. Li Yuanfeng said hypocritically. Lu Miaozhen lowered her head and remained silent. Haha, we are not heartless people. After all, Lu Miaozhen is a disciple of the Ascension sect. She will definitely be reluctant to leave the Ascension sect now. How about this? We will stay in the Ascension sect for 3 more days. During these 3 days, let Miss Miaozhen properly say goodbye to her senior and junior brothers. Elder Yingyang stood up and said with a smile. However, Li Yuanfeng frowned slightly. He originally thought that these 2 people would leave the Ascension sect immediately after taking her away. However, he did not expect Elder Yingyang to not be in a hurry to return. He did not know what Elder Yingyang was up to. Boom. 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 At this moment, a vast and terrifying aura spread out within the Ascension sect like a tide. In the reception hall, everyone was alarmed by this aura. What a powerful aura. Did someone break through the 5 elements transformation? Murong Haoge's pupils shrank slightly as he looked outside the reception hall and muttered to himself. Elder Yingyang also revealed a shocked expression. He was also stunned by this aura. It was not only them. The Ascension School's Li Yuanfeng and the others were also staring at each other with confused expressions on their faces. Everyone walked out of the reception hall and looked at the source of the aura. They realized that it was the famous trial ground of the Ascension sect, the Heavenly Pit. Someone broke through the tribulation in the Heavenly Pit. Moreover, this tribulation is very terrifying. Even the Heavenly Pit's domain is unable to counteract it. This should be the tribulation of the 5 elements transformation. Li Yuanfeng looked in the direction of the Heavenly Pit. His eyes were filled with confusion. After all, to break through the 5 elements transformation, a cultivator had to be at least at the peak of the Void God transformation. In their Ascension sect, only Li Yuanfeng's cultivation had reached the peak of the Void God transformation. However, Li Yuanfeng was still at the main peak. Who else was qualified to break through the 5 elements transformation? Let's go and take a look. Li Yuanfeng's gaze was solemn as he led the group of elders towards the heavenly pit. Nangong Haoge and Elder Yingyang looked at each other. Their expressions did not look good as they followed behind. Chapter 3765. When Li Yuanfeng arrived at the crater with a group of elders, a cold voice came from within. Halt! If anyone dares to take a step forward, kill without mercy. When the words kill without mercy came out, a terrifying killing intent surged out. It was as if it had materialized and created a terrifying ripple. Li Yuanfeng grunted and stopped in his tracks. His eyes were filled with shock. The group of elders behind him spat out a mouthful of blood. Their faces were pale as they retreated. Nangong Haoge and Elder Yingyang, who were following closely behind Li Yuanfeng's group, had a drastic change in expression. They quickly stopped. This is the power of a 5 elements transformation expert. There's actually such an expert in this crater. Elder Yingyang was shocked as he transmitted his voice to Nangong Haoge. I'm afraid it's some old monster in the Ascension sect who hasn't died yet. Our Nangong family's great ancestor is still alive. Your Murong family must have one too. You don't have to be so shocked. Moreover, this kind of old monster is a survivor from the previous era. He doesn't have much lifespan left. They usually hide in the dark. Unless it's a matter of life and death for the sect, they won't make a move, Nangong Haoge said indifferently. Elder Yingyang snorted and said, but it's different now. Look at the calamity above the crater. It's definitely a terrifying calamity that only 5 elements transformation cultivators would encounter. There's a 5 elements transformation expert in the Ascension sect who's about to rise. This isn't good news for our 2 families. Nangong Haoge frowned and said helplessly, there's nothing we can do about it. We can't stop it at all unless we have another rank 2 astral weapon fragment. Zhuoan is the key. We must find that little bastard. I don't need you to tell me, Elder Yingyang said indifferently. Li Yuanfeng slowly retreated from the crater. He respectfully bowed at a mountain in front of the crater. He recognized the voice just now. It was the voice of the Ascension sect's great ancestor. He was the final pillar of the Ascension sect. All of you, leave. Treat today's crater as if nothing happened. Within the crater, the stern voice sounded again and spread to everyone's ears. Yes. Li Yuanfeng bowed respectfully again, and then quickly left the area of the sinkhole with a group of confused elders. When Nangong Haoge and Elder Yingyang saw that Li Yuanfeng had left so straightforwardly, they naturally did not dare to stay here for long and left in embarrassment. Sect leader, why does that voice sound like the old man guarding the entrance of the sinkhole? Is that old man really that powerful? Many of the elders following behind Li Yuanfeng asked in confusion. Li Yuanfeng glanced at these elders. They had only joined the Ascension sect at a later stage, so they did not know the true identity of the old man. They had always thought that the old man was just the gatekeeper of the sinkhole. It was not surprising at all. However, as the leader of the Ascension sect, Li Yuanfeng knew much more than the average person. The guardian of the sinkhole was not simple. He was an expert left behind by the Ascension sect in the early days. He was an existence at the level of an ancestor of the Ascension sect. Li Yuanfeng also understood that this old man's strength was above the entire Ascension sect. He was at least at the 5 elements transformation realm. However, Li Yuanfeng sighed in his heart. This ancestor had long stopped caring about the matters of the Ascension sect. Regardless of whether the Ascension sect was flourishing or declining, he would not casually interfere unless the Ascension sect was in a life-and-death situation. Otherwise, with this ancestor's strength, it was enough for the Ascension sect to fight for a place among the 5 sects. After Li Yuanfeng and the others left, in the mountain at the entrance of the sinkhole, in an ordinary stone room, a black-robed elder frowned slightly. His consciousness was locked onto the sinkhole. This is too unbelievable. This kid's cultivation is only at the peak of the spirit transformation realm. Even if he broke through now, he would only be taking a step towards the heaven-trampling transformation realm. But is this the heaven-crushing tribulation of the heaven-trampling transformation realm? The black-robed elder muttered to himself. His eyes were filled with indescribable shock. This was because he felt that the power of the heaven-crushing tribulation was too terrifying. It had just begun, but the domain of the sinkhole could not withstand it and was gradually collapsing. He knew that the domain of the sinkhole was extremely powerful. Any heaven-crushing tribulation below the 5 elements transformation realm would be neutralized by the domain. However, Zhuowen was only going through the heaven-trampling transformation realm tribulation, and the domain of the sinkhole could not withstand it. Was this guy a freak? This kid is definitely a prodigy. An unprecedented prodigy. In the history of the Ji Prefecture Governor, there has never been a prodigy who could create such a terrifying heaven-crushing tribulation while advancing to the heaven-trampling transformation realm. The black-robed elder's eyes were burning with passion. He had lived for many eras and had seen many prodigies. He had seen the Ji Prefecture Governor, the founders of the 4 great clans and 5 sects. However, none of them were as terrifying as Zhuowen. The black-robed elder was very excited. He knew that he had picked up a treasure. He understood that this kid was comparable to the prodigies of the state regions and even the main regions. He was afraid that the Ji Prefecture Governor was still too young for such a prodigy. I thought that I would be alone in the Ascension sect for the rest of my life and never step into the Wukong state region again. However, now I've found a disciple who can meet your requirements. Ji Tianxiao, I accidentally caused you to lose your beloved disciple back then. I've said that if I can't find a disciple who meets your requirements, I'll never step into the Wukong state region again. However, I think I can fulfill that promise now. The black-robed elder muttered to himself. His eyes were filled with reminiscence as if he was recalling something. In the sinkhole, Zhuowen stood on a rock and looked up at the sky. In the sky above the sinkhole, the terrifying heaven-crushing tribulation fell endlessly. However, it was offset by an invisible force. That force was the domain of the sinkhole. However, Zhuowen noticed that as the tribulation grew stronger, the domain of the sinkhole began to weaken and weaken. His divine telekinesis could clearly sense that countless cracks had appeared on the surface of the invisible domain. He knew that the domain of the sinkhole would not last much longer. I didn't expect that just by advancing to the heaven-trampling transformation realm, the power of the heaven-crushing tribulation would be equivalent to the power of the heaven-trampling 5 elements transformation realm. Zhuowen muttered to himself as he silently looked at the tribulation in the sky that was getting stronger and stronger. However, Zhuowen was not afraid in the slightest. During this period of time, he had been improving. What he improved was not only his cultivation and strength, but also his divine abilities, comprehension, and temperament. Zhuowen knew very well that although his cultivation had only increased by 1 major realm, his overall strength had already undergone an earth-shattering transformation. Therefore, he did not need to prepare the materials to transcend the tribulation like before. This was because he believed that with his current strength, he could rely on himself to transcend any tribulation. Crack. In the sky above the sinkhole, a crisp cracking sound could be heard. Then, the dazzling and terrifying heaven-crushing tribulation broke through the domain of the sinkhole and rained down on Zhuowen. It's coming. Zhuowen's eyes were filled with battle intent. He had no intention of dodging the heaven-crushing tribulation. Instead, he stomped his right foot and rushed up. He wanted to directly face this terrifying heaven-crushing tribulation. Boom, boom, boom. Boundless tribulation energy smashed onto Zhuowen's body, emitting countless energy ripples. Chapter 3766. I'm no longer who I used to be. What's the big calamity? I'll break it with a punch. Zhuowen's eyes were dyed purple. With a punch, he actually forcefully blasted the great calamity wave in front of him into 2 halves. Meanwhile, he soared into the sky like a god of war draped in invincible battle armor. He had already stepped into the realm of the heaven-trampling transformation. At that moment, he could step into the sky and go anywhere. This kid's talent is terrifying. He can break through such a terrifying calamity. Although he's only at the heaven-trampling transformation, he already has the power of a void god transformation. In the stone room, the black-robed elder saw everything with his divine thought. The more he saw, the more shocked he became. Originally, he thought that Zhuowen would have a hard time resisting such a calamity. He thought that he would have a slim chance of survival. However, this kid actually faced it head-on and broke through the calamity. He actually suppressed such a terrifying calamity with his own strength. The terrifying power of the calamity also affected the entire Ascension sect. 1/3 of the Sky Dragon mountain range where the Ascension sect was located began to tremble violently. Countless disciples in the Ascension sect looked at the crater in awe. Everyone had a feeling that the person who was going through the calamity in the crater would be a rising star in the future. Although most of them did not know who was going through the calamity. What a terrifying calamity. Could it be that person? Zhong Xinyan stood on a mountain peak and looked at the terrifying calamity in the crater silently. Her beautiful eyes were filled with complicated emotions. She could not help but think of the young man who was sitting in the crater. After an unknown period of time, the sun gradually set. The terrifying calamity had finally ended. Everyone in the Ascension sect heaved a sigh of relief. Although many of the disciples were curious about the identity of the person who was going through the calamity. However, the higher-ups of the Ascension sect had given the order that no one was allowed to go near the crater today. Even the elders were not allowed. Bang! Zhuowen fell into the crater again and the entire crater shook. Then, Zhuowen took a step forward and stood a few thousand meters above the crater. Walking in the air. This is the special power that the heaven-trampling transformation gave me. This feeling is amazing. Zhuowen's eyes flashed with a sharp light as he looked down at the huge pit below. There was an indescribable excitement in his heart. Ever since he entered the 100 outer realms, he couldn't fly anymore. He felt as if he had fallen from heaven into hell. However, now that he had advanced to the heaven-trampling transformation stage, he once again possessed the ability to fly. He had once again regained the feeling of being able to look down on all the other mountains. Traversing thousands of meters with a single step, this kid really isn't an ordinary heaven-trampling transformation cultivator. This is the first time I've seen such a powerful heaven-trampling transformation cultivator. The black-robed old man slowly walked out of the stone room. He raised his head and looked at Zhuowen, who was several thousand meters above him. The light in his eyes grew brighter and brighter. Zhuowen fell back into the sinkhole. Looking at the black-robed old man in front of him, he cupped his fists and said, "Senior, thank you for protecting me." Although Zhuowen had been undergoing the tribulation all this time, his divine sense had not relaxed at all. He was also paying attention to the outside world. Especially after the heaven-crushing tribulation broke through the heavenly pit's domain, the commotion was simply too great. The entire Ascension sect was alarmed. The Ascension sect's sect master, Li Yuanfeng, and the others had all come over. If the black-robed old man had not shouted at Li Yuanfeng and the others to retreat, his tribulation might very well have been disturbed. At the same time, Zhuowen was also quite wary of this black-robed old man in his heart. This old man was able to shout at the Ascension sect's sect master, Li Yuanfeng, to retreat. It was clear that this person's identity was not ordinary, and he was also very powerful. "You don't have to be so polite to me, Zhuowen. I won't delve into your motive for joining the Ascension sect. However, you must remember to never do anything that will harm the Ascension sect. Also, if you have any requests from now on, I'll try my best to satisfy you. You can enter and exit the sinkhole freely. I can even unlock the authority of the 5th level of the Magical Abilities Pavilion for you. I can even make the decision to grant you some of the Ascension sect's astral weapon fragment." The black-robed old man's gaze became very serious. However, the conditions he offered were extremely tempting. "What price do I have to pay?" Zhuowen asked calmly. The black-robed old man's conditions had already attracted Zhuowen's attention. However, Zhuowen knew that there was no such thing as a free lunch in heaven. The black-robed old man would definitely ask for something in return for offering such generous conditions for him. "I only need you to owe me a request. When I ask you for a favor in the future, you must never refuse this request of mine," the black-robed old man said with a faint smile. "What request?" Zhuowen continued to ask. I can't tell you now. I'll wait until the right time to tell you this request. The black-robed old man said. Zhuowen turned around and walked straight toward the sinkhole's exit. The black-robed old man's pupils shrank slightly. He hurriedly went forward to stop Zhuowen. You. What do you mean? The black-robed old man frowned and asked. A request that can't be told immediately. I can't agree to this condition. Senior, your conditions are very tempting. However, in my opinion, those are things that I will get sooner or later. You're just giving them to me in advance. It's not enough to exchange for a request from you. After Zhuowen calmly finished speaking, he brushed past the black-robed old man's shoulder. The black-robed old man was stunned. He looked at Zhuowen's back that was gradually getting further and further away. He could not help but smile bitterly. This kid is really shrewd. However, the shrewder he is, the more assured I will be when he goes to Wukong State in the future. Sigh, if I want this kid to agree to my request, I'm afraid I'll have to put in more effort. After Zhuowen left the sinkhole, he went straight back to his residence. He had already obtained the third proof token and was qualified to enter the third level of the Superpowers Pavilion. He planned to bring the third proof token to the Superpowers Pavilion the next day. It was already too late and night was about to fall. As soon as Zhuowen returned to his residence, he saw Tang Hongmiao sitting cross-legged in the courtyard next door. He was still cultivating. Perhaps he had noticed Zhuowen's movement, so he slowly opened his eyes. When he saw that it was Zhuowen, he happily went up to him. Brother Tang, you've improved quite quickly. Have you already broken through to the fourth blight? Zhuowen sized up Tang Hongmiao and found that he had already broken through. The corners of his mouth curled into a smile. Tang Hongmiao scratched his head in embarrassment and said, This is all thanks to you, Brother Zhuo. The cultivation technique you gave me is really amazing. My Taoist root is so weak, but I can still cultivate so quickly. Zhuowen said solemnly, the primordial technique doesn't have high requirements for the Taoist root, but you can't tell anyone about this cultivation technique. Otherwise, it will attract unnecessary trouble. You must remember this. Tang Hongmiao nodded seriously and said, Brother Zhuo, I know this even if you don't tell me. I definitely won't dare to tell anyone about this. Zhuowen nodded and continued, By the way, have the people from the Nangong family and the Murong family left the Ascension sect? Zhuowen already knew that the people from the Nangong family and the Murong family had come. In his opinion, it was impossible for the two families to find him in the Ascension sect while he was hiding his identity. Therefore, he thought that the two families should have left the Ascension sect on their own after they failed to find him. They haven't left yet. Tang Hongmiao sighed softly. They haven't left yet. Zhuowen frowned. The Nangong family and the Murong family came to find someone called Zhuowen, but there is no such person in the Ascension sect. Then, they asked for another person from the Ascension sect. They went too far and didn't put the Ascension sect in their eyes at all, Tang Hongmiao said angrily. Chapter 3767. I heard that she's an inner disciple. I remember that she's a girl called Lu Miaozhen. Tang Hongmiao pondered. Zhuowen's pupils constricted when he heard that. A cold light shot out from his eyes. Nangong family, Murong family, you're really something. Zhuowen's expression was cold. Tang Hongmiao, who was standing next to him, felt the chill and could not help but shiver. Brother Zhuo, are you all right? Do you know Lu Miaozhen? Tang Hongmiao noticed Zhuowen's strange behavior and asked carefully. Lu Miaozhen is my savior. How dare the Nangong family and Murong family target her? Brother Tang, when do the two families plan to take Lu Miaozhen away? Zhuowen asked. I heard that the two families gave Lu Miaozhen 3 days. They should be taking her away in 3 days, Tang Hongmiao said. All right, in 3 days, follow me to the main peak. After saying that, Zhuowen directly stepped into his residence. What? To the main peak? Tang Hongmiao was confused. What did Zhuowen mean? Was he going to the main peak to save Lu Miaozhen? However, Zhuowen had already closed the door. He could only return to his house with a stomach full of doubts. At dawn, Zhuowen left his residence and headed straight to the Superpowers Pavilion. He had already obtained the third proof token and planned to enter the fourth level of the Superpowers Pavilion today. You're here again. Are you going to enter the third level of the Superpowers Pavilion today? The Superpowers Pavilion's administrator, Lian Yu, greeted Zhuowen when she saw him. Lian Yu had a very deep impression of Zhuowen. This guy was obviously an outer disciple, but the first time he entered the Superpowers Pavilion, he went against her. After that, he obtained 2 proof tokens and entered the second and third level of the Superpowers Pavilion. This was a height that many inner disciples could not reach. What was even stranger was that this guy stayed in the Superpowers Pavilion for an entire day and did not take any superpowers with him when he came out. He was really a strange person. Therefore, Lian Yu had a very deep impression of Zhuowen. I'm going to enter the fourth level of the Superpowers Pavilion today. Zhuowen took out the third token and tossed it to Lian Yu. So it's the fourth floor. You can go up then. Lian Yu answered subconsciously, but she quickly realized that something was wrong. She glared at Zhuowen and said, "What did you say?" "The fourth floor. This is the third token. I now have the qualifications to enter the fourth level of the Supernatural Abilities Pavilion." Zhuowen pointed at the token he threw on the table and said indifferently. Lian Yu looked at the token carefully and said dejectedly, "You can go up now. The restriction on the fourth floor has been opened to you." When Zhuowen went up, Lian Yu was still in a daze. She still felt like she was dreaming. She still remembered that this guy had only been in the Mystical Abilities Pavilion for a little over 2 months, and he had already obtained 3 proof tokens in a row. This guy had at least passed through more than 40 sinkholes in the sinkholes. How did this guy do it? When Zhuowen entered the fourth floor, he realized that there were fewer superpowers books than there were on the first 3 floors. He glanced around and realized that there were only about 30 books. He knew that these were all level 4 superpowers. In the G prefecture, superpowers of this level were very rare. You're just an outer sect disciple. How did you enter the fourth level of the Superpowers Pavilion? A cold voice sounded. A young man with strange black tattoos on his face walked out from the back of a bookshelf. This young man was wearing a disciple's uniform. However, it was not the uniform of an outer sect or inner sect disciple. It was a different kind of disciple's uniform. This person's aura was extremely powerful. It was much more powerful than that of an inner sect disciple. This was a void god transformation elite. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes. As far as he knew, the strongest genius among the inner sect disciples was a disciple named Cha Long. However, he was only at the peak of the Heaven Ascension transformation stage. However, Zhuowen was not interested in this person's identity. He came to the Superpowers Pavilion to learn how to fuse superpowers, not to learn about gossip. Therefore, Zhuowen merely glanced at this person. Then, he walked to the nearest bookshelf and began to flip through the superpowers books. You're ignoring me? The young man's expression turned ugly. However, he did not lose his temper. Instead, he returned to his original spot and browsed through the superpowers books. He was not an impulsive person. The prohibition spell on the Superpowers Pavilion was extremely powerful. It would not allow an outer sect disciple to enter without permission. There must be a reason why this person was able to enter here. Plus, personal fights were not allowed here. If he had the time to be angry, he would rather spend it studying superpowers. However, the young man quickly realized that something was wrong. He realized that the outer sect disciple was walking around the fourth floor. He was not reading the superpowers books at all. What is this guy doing? The young man was very annoyed. He walked out of the bookshelf and strangely saw that Zhuowen was walking around the bookshelf while quickly flipping through the superpowers books. After he was done, he walked around again and went to another place. He did the same thing and quickly flipped through the superpowers books. Is there something wrong with this guy's brain? The young man was dumbfounded. Who would enter the Superpowers Pavilion to read superpowers books like this? He thought that this guy was not here to learn superpowers. He was here to cause trouble. There really are 5th level superpowers on this floor. And there are two of them. Zhuowen stopped at a corner. There, he found two fifth-level superpowers. Moreover, these two divine abilities were severely damaged. They couldn't be cultivated normally at all. Most likely, they were placed here as decorations. However, to Zhuowen, they were priceless treasures. This was because the Tai word stone could be used to deduce the complete superpowers books. After Zhuowen finished browsing through these two superpowers, he sat down in a lotus position. In his mind, he began to deduce the complete superpowers books. After around 2 hours, Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes. He had finished deducing the superpowers books and incorporated them into the Grand Mist Soldier spell. When Zhuowen finished browsing through all the superpowers on the 4th floor, his Grand Mist Soldier spell and Grand Mist movement technique had evolved again. The Grand Mist Soldier spell had evolved to the peak of 5th-level superpowers. As for the Grand Mist movement technique, it had barely reached the level of 5th-level superpowers. The reason why the Grand Mist movement technique's improvement was slower than the Grand Mist Soldier spell was mainly because there were not many movement-type superpowers in the Superpowers Pavilion. Zhuowen did not integrate enough superpowers books. Hence, the Grand Mist movement technique's improvement was slightly slower. After Zhuowen left the Superpowers Pavilion, he saw that it was still early. Hence, he went straight to the sinkhole. He planned to try the 6th group's sinkhole in the next few days. This sinkhole was indeed a good place. The further one went, the denser the chaotic energy. It was definitely a holy land for cultivation. Of course, the further one went, the more terrifying the pressure in the sinkhole was. Ordinary people did not have the qualifications to cultivate in there. Otherwise, they would easily lose their lives. After Zhuowen left the Superpowers Pavilion, the young man with the black lines on his face also walked down the stairs. He watched as Zhuowen left. Then, he went to Lian Yu and asked, "Elder Lian Yu, why was that outer sect disciple able to enter the 4th floor of the Superpowers Pavilion? Junior fan, you haven't been here for a long time. Hence, you don't know this person. He entered the 4th floor of the Superpowers Pavilion because he went through the sinkhole and obtained the proof token." Lian Yu was very polite to the young man. He even tried to curry favor with him. Chapter 3768. Look, it's Fan Jialiang. He's the only core disciple of the Ascension sect and the #1 genius of the Ascension sect. I didn't expect him to come to the Superpowers Pavilion today. It's really senior brother Fan. It's my first time seeing him in person. He's so cool. People were coming and going at the entrance of the Superpowers Pavilion. Fan Jialiang's appearance immediately attracted the attention of many disciples. There were even many female disciples who were infatuated with Fan Jialiang. Fan Jialiang turned a deaf ear to the reactions of the surrounding disciples. Instead, he silently looked at Zhuowen's back as he left. How interesting. To be able to obtain the token to enter the 4th level of the Superpowers Pavilion, this means that this person has already passed the 5th group. How did he do it? Fan Jialiang was bewildered. He often went to the giant pit to cultivate, and his highest record was only the 6th group. However, an outer disciple actually made it to the 5th group. No one in the inner sect could match this result. Another 2 days passed. On the main peak of the Ascension sect, Elder Yingyang and Murong Hauge were sitting in the reception hall. Li Yuanfeng sat on the main seat and said with a smile, "Lu Miaozhen will be here soon. I think the two of you should fulfill your promise." Nangong Hauge and Elder Yingyang looked at each other. They took out a spiritual ring and handed it to Li Yuanfeng. Li Yuanfeng scanned it with his divine telekinesis and found that there was indeed a rank 3 heaven-breaking divine artifact inside. He accepted the spiritual ring with satisfaction. It will take some time for Lu Miaozhen to arrive at the main peak. Sect Master Li, how about this? I've also brought the young experts of the Nangong family with me. They all want to see the strength of their peers in the Ascension sect. I wonder if Sect Master Li can fulfill their wish, Nangong Hauge said. He suddenly spoke. Li Yuanfeng looked at the young man in white beside Nangong Hauge. He narrowed his eyes and said in a deep voice, "This must be the first young master of the Nangong family, Nangong Wuji? Nangong Wuji, who was dressed in white, cupped his fists at Li Yuanfeng and said with a smile, "That's me. I've always heard that the Ascension sect has many geniuses with extraordinary strength, so I've always wanted to see it for myself. It just so happens that Uncle Hauge wants to make a trip to the Ascension sect. So, I shamelessly requested to follow him. I want to spar with the many genius disciples of the Ascension sect." Li Yuanfeng frowned slightly. He glanced at Nangong Hauge, who was calm and unruffled in the midst of chaos. How could he not know that Nangong Hauge was testing the strength of the younger generation of the Ascension sect? Plus, Nangong Wuji's name was very well known in the Ji prefecture. Li Yuanfeng had heard of him before, so he didn't really want to accept this challenge. However, if he, as the sect master, did not accept the challenge, it would be a disgrace to the Ascension sect. "First Elder, call Cha Long over," Li Yuanfeng said. The Great Elder nodded and took out his communication jade talisman to send a message to Cha Long. Not long after, Cha Long entered the guest hall. Cha Long greets sect leader and elders. Cha Long was a resolute young man. He knelt down in the guest hall with an excited look on his face. Cha Long, he is the first young master of the Nangong family, Nangong Wuji. He wants to spar with the experts of the younger generation of the Ascension sect. You are the number one inner disciple. You can spar with him. Remember not to overdo it, Li Yuanfeng said. Cha Long nodded and stood up. His eyes were filled with fighting spirit as he looked at Nangong Wuji. Nangong Wuji looked at Cha Long strangely. He shook his head and said, "Sect Master Li, is this the number one inner disciple of the Ascension sect? He's trash. He hasn't even reached the Void God transformation realm. I can crush him with a single finger." As soon as Nangong Wuji said this, Li Yuanfeng's face turned ugly. The rest of the Ascension sect's elders in the guest hall also wore gloomy expressions. Nangong Wuji was too presumptuous. How could he say that Cha Long was trash? Nangong Hauge immediately reprimanded him. "Wuji, don't be rude. How can you say such things?" After saying this, Nangong Hauge looked at Li Yuanfeng and said with a smile, "Wuji is young and impetuous. It's inevitable that he would be rude. Sect Master Li, you won't mind, right?" Li Yuanfeng snorted coldly. Since Nangong Hauge had already said this, it would be unbecoming of him if he lost his temper. Cha Long looked at Nangong Wuji angrily and said in a deep voice, "Nangong Wuji, let's fight." A mocking smile appeared on Nangong Wuji's face as he said, "I'm not just saying. Let's go outside the parlor. I'll only use one finger. You only deserve one finger from me." Cha Long couldn't take it anymore. He dashed out of the guest hall. Nangong Wuji landed gracefully on the ground and said calmly, "Go ahead. Humph. You will pay the price for looking down on others." Cha Long roared and charged forward. His body was like a ghost. Numerous shadows appeared on the ground. Then, he appeared behind Nangong Wuji like a ghost. He held a dagger in his hand and thrust it at the back of Nangong Wuji's head. Bang! Then, Cha Long found that Nangong Wuji had turned around and flicked his finger to deflect Cha Long's dagger. When Cha Long came back to his senses, Nangong Wuji's finger landed between Cha Long's eyebrows. Puff! Cha Long's eyebrows exploded and blood splattered everywhere. Cha Long screamed miserably. He held his eyebrows and rolled on the ground. Is he really in the Void God transformation realm? Nangong Wuji is indeed the first young master of the Nangong family. He is really powerful. Li Yuanfeng frowned. He thought that Cha Long would be able to hold on for a few rounds. He didn't expect Nangong Wuji to defeat Cha Long in just one round. Sect Master Li, is there no one else in the Ascension sect? He is too weak. Nangong Wuji said arrogantly. Sect Master, let Fan Jialiang fight him. He is strong enough to defeat Nangong Wuji, the first elder said angrily. The rest of the elders also made their requests. Nangong Wuji had challenged a disciple of the Ascension sect and he was so arrogant. They were naturally unhappy with him and they had to teach him a lesson. Since they were seniors, They couldn't deal with a junior. Only Fan Jialiang, a core disciple, could deal with this situation. Jialiang is here. Li Yuanfeng said calmly. As soon as Li Yuanfeng finished speaking, 3 figures walked in. They were 2 women and a man. The young man who walked in front had strange black tattoos on his face. He was Fan Jialiang, who Zhuoan had met in the Superpowers Pavilion yesterday. The 2 women behind Fan Jialiang were Elder Yuqi and Lu Miaozhen. Master, elders, I have brought Lu Miaozhen here. Fan Jialiang looked at Nangong Wuji indifferently. He walked into the living room and knelt down on one knee. Jialiang, you have done well. Li Yuanfeng looked at Fan Jialiang with satisfaction and said to Lu Miaozhen, Miaozhen, the Nangong family and the Murong family will treat you well. Don't worry. You can go to them now. Lu Miaozhen nodded mechanically as if she was numb. She walked to Nangong Haoge and Elder Ingyan's side and stood there motionlessly. And that is Nangong Wuji. He wants to exchange pointers with the young experts of our Ascension sect. You go and show him the strength of our Ascension sect. Li Yuanfeng pointed at Nangong Wuji and said to Fan Jialiang. Chapter 3769. Fan Jialiang? I have heard of you. You are the only core disciple of the Ascension sect. You are the strongest among the younger generation of the Ascension sect. If I defeat you, there will be no one among the younger generation of the Ascension sect. Nangong Wuji stared coldly at Fan Jialiang. His words were not polite at all. Haha. You are very confident. However, you will never be able to fulfill your promise. You are no match for me. Fan Jialiang yawned. A shapeless shadow was moving toward Nangong Wuji from beneath his feet. When Nangong Wuji realized what was happening, the shadow was already beneath his feet. Then, countless black ropes appeared from the shadow and bound Nangong Wuji's limbs. Haha. It seems like the outcome has been decided. Jialiang's Dao root is very special. It is the illusory Dao root. He can control any shadow and turn it into a tangible force. His attacks are silent and impossible to guard against. Li Yuanfeng, who was sitting on the main seat, laughed when he saw this scene. He was pleased with himself. Fan Jialiang's strength is indeed not bad. If I'm not wrong, he should be at the early stage of the Void God transformation stage. Coupled with his mysterious Dao root, an early-stage Void God transformation stage cultivator would be easily defeated. However, sect leader Li, you might not know that Wuji's strength is not only at the early empty God transformation realm. Nangong Haoge sat upright in his seat with a calm face. He was not worried about Nangong Wuji being tied up at all. Instead, he joked. Li Yuanfeng's eyes narrowed. He was surprised to see a terrifying aura erupting from Nangong Wuji's body. This aura formed a strong wind that broke the ropes around Nangong Wuji's body. What? Your cultivation is at the intermediate empty God transformation realm? Fan Jialiang looked at Nangong Wuji in disbelief. He did not expect that there would be a cultivator with a higher cultivation than him in the younger generation. Brother Fan, you are not being nice. You attacked me before the battle even started. I am not even ready. Nangong Wuji grinned, revealing a row of white teeth. Fan Jialiang felt a tinge of fear in his heart. Soon, Nangong Wuji disappeared. Then, Nangong Wuji's mocking voice came from behind him. Brother Fan, where are you looking? Fan Jialiang suddenly turned around, and then a huge fist smashed into his face. Catcher. The power of this punch was so great that there were continuous explosions in the air. After that, Fan Jialiang rolled on the ground for a long distance before stopping. His face was completely swollen, his nose bridge was shattered, and his face was almost unrecognizable. After Fan Jialiang struggled to stand up, Nangong Wuji's ghostly figure reappeared and kicked Fan Jialiang's chest. Fan Jialiang flew up into the air while Nangong Wuji moved like lightning, shuttling back and forth in the air. Every time Nangong Wuji kicked Fan Jialiang back and forth in the air, Fan Jialiang was unable to fall down. The reception hall was completely silent. Li Yuanfeng and the other elders' faces were terrifyingly gloomy. Fan Jialiang, the strongest disciple of the Ascension sect, was being beaten up by Nangong Wuji in front of everyone. Nangong Haoge, Jialiang has already lost. Why don't you ask Nangong Wuji to stop? Li Yuanfeng shouted at Nangong Haoge with a gloomy face. Nangong Haoge, on the other hand, was very calm. He smiled faintly and said, Sect Master Li, this Fan Jialiang hasn't admitted defeat yet. He still wants to continue fighting. As elders, it's best for us not to interfere in the matters of the younger generation. Li Yuanfeng was flustered and exasperated, but he soon calmed down. He sent a message to Fan Jialiang, asking him to admit defeat as soon as possible. However, Li Yuanfeng was shocked and angry that Fan Jialiang didn't reply to him at all. He already knew what Fan Jialiang meant. He didn't accept Nangong Wuji's challenge and didn't want to admit defeat. Bang! Fan Jialiang was blasted to the ground again. His 7 orifices were bleeding, and his consciousness began to blur. Nangong Wuji landed on the ground again and glanced at Fan Jialiang disdainfully. He shook his head and said, "Too weak. Is this the strength of the strongest disciple of the younger generation of the Ascension sect? He's too weak. I didn't even enjoy the fight. I'm very disappointed. By the way, sect leader Li, is there anyone stronger in the Ascension sect? After all, the Ascension sect is one of the 5 sects. Your disciples can't be trash, right?" Nangong Wuji looked at Li Yuanfeng, who was sitting on the main seat in the reception hall, and asked provocatively. Li Yuanfeng's right hand gripped the armrest so tightly that blue veins appeared. How could he not know that Nangong Wuji said that on purpose? Fan Jialiang was the strongest disciple of the Ascension sect. Now that Nangong Wuji had defeated Fan Jialiang, Nangong Wuji asked if there was anyone stronger. This was a slap in the face. Nangong Haoge finally opened his mouth and scolded, "Wuji, don't mess around. Fan Jialiang is already the strongest disciple of the younger generation of the Ascension sect. Who else in the Ascension sect can challenge you?" After saying that, Nangong Haoge apologized to Li Yuanfeng. "Sect leader Li, Wuji is young and impetuous. He doesn't know how to talk. Please be magnanimous and forgive him. Also, Fan Jialiang's strength is not bad. You should know that an early Void God Transformation Realm expert can't even withstand 3 moves from Wuji. However, it's not easy for Fan Jialiang to fight with Wuji to this extent." Li Yuanfeng's face darkened. Although Nangong Haoge was comforting him, his words made him feel uncomfortable. Bang! At this moment, 2 young men walked in from the stone gate in front of the open space. What caught everyone's attention was that these 2 young men were wearing the outer sect disciple uniform. The 2 disciples quickly arrived at the open space. The one in the lead immediately fixed his gaze on Lu Miaozhen, who was standing beside Nangong Haoge with a dull look in her eyes. "Why are you 2 outer sect disciples in the main summit's reception hall? Who allowed you to come in?" Li Yuanfeng's face turned ugly when he saw the 2 of them. He immediately scolded them. The 2 of them were not strangers. They were Zhuowen and Tang Hongmiao. After dawn, Zhuowen left his residence and brought Tang Hongmiao to the main summit. Brother Zhuo, we are outer sect disciples after all. It's against the rules to enter this place. I think we'd better leave first." Tang Hongmiao lowered his head. He did not dare to look at Li Yuanfeng and the other higher-ups of the Ascension sect. He was like a child who had done something wrong. "It's okay. They can't do anything to us." As Zhuowen spoke, he noticed Fan Jialiang, who was lying on the ground after being beaten up. He recognized Fan Jialiang at a glance. Wasn't he the young man he met at the 4th level of the Superpowers Pavilion a few days ago? Now, he was seriously injured. "Junior brother, leave quickly. This isn't a place you should be." Fan Jialiang also recognized Zhuowen. He hurriedly spoke, intending to ask Zhuowen to leave this place. Zhuowen came to Fan Jialiang's side. He took out a healing elixir and handed it to Fan Jialiang. Fan Jialiang's gaze was complicated. He rejected Zhuowen's healing elixir and took out a higher-grade healing elixir. Zhuowen was speechless. As expected of a core disciple of the Ascension sect, he always had a high-grade healing elixir on him. Chapter 3770. An outer disciple of the Ascension sect? What are you two trash doing here? Or is it to say that your Ascension sect has no one and is planning to send 2 pieces of trash to send me away? Nangong Wuji cast a sidelong glance at Zhuowen and Tang Hongmiao. His eyes were full of disdain when he discovered that their auras were not strong. Who are you? Don't block my way. I have something to say to Li Yuanfeng. Zhuowen waved his hand impatiently. He did not know Nangong Wuji and was not interested in him. He had come to question Li Yuanfeng about why he had handed Lu Miaozhen over to the Nangong family and the Murong family. Junior brother, he is Nangong Wuji, the most powerful person among the younger generation of the Nangong family. Even I am no match for him. Don't provoke him, Fan Jialiang reminded Nangong Wuji with a bitter smile. Nangong Wuji? Zhuowen sized up the young man in front of him. It was not the first time he had heard of Nangong Wuji's name. Lu Yichuan had mentioned this name to him when he was in Yunjin Ridge. The person Lu Yichuan wanted him to challenge was Nangong Wuji. Nangong Wuji did not expect to meet this person in the Ascension sect. No one can save you today. You are just an outer disciple of the Ascension sect. How dare you insult me? Blue veins appeared on Nangong Wuji's forehead. He was completely enraged by Zhuowen's words. Go to hell. Nangong Wuji moved like a ghost and disappeared from where he was. In the blink of an eye, he appeared above Zhuowen. His fist smashed out with the force of a thunderbolt. His momentum was like a rainbow as he smashed towards Zhuowen's Qianling point. He had used all his strength in this punch. He was determined to kill Zhuowen. Soon after, Nangong Wuji was shocked to discover that Zhuowen had disappeared before his eyes. His fists had landed on the ground. Then, a strong wind came and hit Nangong Wuji's back. It was Zhuowen's whip kick. The powerful force behind the kick set off a terrifying shockwave. Nangong Wuji took the full brunt of the attack and fell to the ground in a sorry state. What? In the guest hall, everyone involuntarily stood up and looked at this scene in disbelief. This was Nangong Wuji, who had just defeated the number 1 disciple of the inner sect, Cha Long, and the core disciple, Fan Jialiang. But now, Nangong Wuji was trampled to the ground by an unknown outer disciple. This was too exaggerated. Nangong Haoge clenched his fists tightly as he stared at Zhuowen. He was the most shocked. This must be a joke. Fan Jialiang was already stunned on the spot. At this moment, he felt as if there were countless horses galloping through his heart. It was really too complicated. Zhuowen wasn't surprised. His primordial chaos movement art had fused the essence of many movement art divine abilities. It was incomparably exquisite. In the entire Ji Prefecture's prefecture overseer, there was probably not a single movement divine ability that could compare to the primordial movement technique. Now that Zhuowen had used his movement art, even a 5 elements transformation realm expert might not be able to catch up with him, let alone Nangong Wuji, who was only at the middle stage of the empty god transformation realm. Nangong Wuji roared and started to unleash all of his strength. However, he was horrified to find that a strange energy surged out from the young man who was trampling on him. It was actually suppressing his strength. Nangong Wuji couldn't get up at all. He could only be humiliated by being trampled on and used as a stepping stone. Sect Master Li, your Ascension sect has really hidden your strength well. I didn't know that you had such a genius, Nangong Haoge said to Li Yuanfeng. His face was gloomy as he looked coldly at Zhuowen. Li Yuanfeng smiled embarrassedly and said, he is the seed that our Ascension sect has been nurturing. He can't show himself easily. Although Li Yuanfeng said this, he was completely dumbfounded. Zhuowen was a complete stranger to him. He had never seen Zhuowen before. Li Yuanfeng looked coldly at the elder who was in charge of the outer sanctum. How could he not have discovered such a genius disciple in advance? I see. Nangong Haoge snorted coldly. Then, he looked at Zhuowen and said, now, remove your dirty feet. Get lost. Zhuowen looked coldly at Nangong Haoge. He lifted one of his feet and stomped fiercely. This stomp was infused with the power of the Hongmeng soldier formula. When he stomped down, a crisp sound of metal clashing could be heard. The entire open space and even the main peak seemed to have been shaken by this stomp. Nangong Wuji screamed and spat out a mouthful of blood. He rolled his eyes and foamed at the mouth. Who do you think you are? You want me to get lost? What right do you have to do that? Zhuowen said indifferently. At this moment, the atmosphere in the reception hall became very strange. Everyone's gaze became strange. This was the first time that they had seen such an arrogant disciple. He dared to scold Nangong Haoge in front of him. Nangong Haoge was the second most powerful person in the Nangong family. Hehe, what an interesting guy. This is the first time that Nangong Haoge has been humiliated. Elder Yingyang looked at Zhuowen and muttered to himself with interest. Sect Master Li, are all the disciples of your Ascension sect so ill-mannered? Wuji has already been defeated. Why hasn't this little bastard let go? He even insulted me in public. If it weren't for you, I would have attacked this little bastard long ago. Nangong Haoge took a deep breath and looked at Li Yuanfeng with a sinister gaze. Brother Haoge, calm down. Let me handle this matter. After comforting Nangong Haoge, Li Yuanfeng said to Zhuowen, let go of Nangong Wuji first. After all, he is a member of the Nangong family. You have already defeated him. Don't push your luck. This matter ends here. However, Zhuowen smiled. He looked coldly at Li Yuanfeng and said, Sect Master Li, you are really a good sect master of the Ascension sect. You are quite enthusiastic about the people of the Nangong family, but why don't I see you being so enthusiastic about the disciples of our Ascension sect? Li Yuanfeng frowned slightly and said in a deep voice, what do you mean? I heard that the Nangong family and the Murong family openly came to ask for people. The first time, they asked for a person called Zhuowen. You actively helped them to find him, but you couldn't find him. Then, they asked for another person. This time, they asked for inner disciple Lu Miaozhen. You agreed readily. And this Nangong Wuji defeated 2 disciples of the Ascension sect in a row. He even beat up Fan Jialiang without restraint and took the opportunity to belittle the Ascension sect. You tolerated it. I just want to ask you, Sect Master Li. Are you the sect master of the Ascension sect, or the Nangong family and the Murong family? Zhuowen asked indifferently. Li Yuanfeng's face darkened. He scolded coldly, how dare you? Of course I am the sect master of the Ascension sect. You are the master of the Ascension school. However, all of your actions have always been biased towards outsiders. Furthermore, you would grant all of the requests of outsiders. You are deceiving your master, destroying your ancestors, and betraying your sect, no? Zhuowen sneered. Li Yuanfeng's face finally changed. Zhuowen's words were too serious. He was directly accusing him of deceiving his master and betraying his ancestors. Chapter 3771. Zhuowen's eyes were cold. When the elder dashed toward him, he lifted Nangong Wuji with one hand and threw him toward the elder. When the elder saw Nangong Wuji being thrown toward him, his expression changed slightly. He quickly withdrew his hand and changed his attack. However, his attack was too fierce. When he forced himself to change his attack, he immediately suffered a serious internal injury and spat out a mouthful of blood. After all, Nangong Wuji was the #1 genius of the Nangong family. If the elder's attack landed on Nangong Wuji's life would be in danger. The elder could not bear the responsibility. Suppressing his internal injuries, the elder formed a palm with his right hand and gently caught Nangong Wuji in midair. I really don't understand now. Are you an elder of the Nangong family or an elder of the Ascension sect? You attacked me, a disciple of the same sect, but you treated Nangong Wuji as if he was a treasure. Aren't you despicable? As soon as the elder caught Nangong Wuji, a cold voice came from above him. He raised his head and found that Zhuowen had appeared above him at some point. His leg whipped towards his face like a cannonball. Puff! The elder's face received a solid blow, and all of the teeth in his mouth were shattered. He fell to the ground, his whole body twitching. The elder's cultivation was similar to Nangong Wuji's. Although he was slightly stronger, He was nothing compared to Zhuowen's freakish speed. Li Yuanfeng's face darkened. Although Zhuowen was a disciple of the Ascension sect, Zhuowen had dared to injure an elder of the sect in front of him. Zhuowen had offended his superior and slapped him in the face. Who gave you the courage to offend your superior and hit an elder of the sect? Li Yuanfeng could not bear it anymore. He stared coldly at Zhuowen. Shut up. As the sect master of the Ascension sect, how could you hand over a disciple of your own sect so easily? This is against the laws of nature. What right do you have to be the sect master of the Ascension sect? What right do you have to lecture me? Zhuowen scolded Li Yuanfeng. Then, he pointed at Lu Miaozhen, who was standing beside Nangong Haoge and Elder Yingyang, and said, "Today, I'm here to replace Miss Miaozhen." Li Yuanfeng was flustered and exasperated. He wanted to kill Zhuowen. Zhuowen was too arrogant to say that he was not qualified to be the sect master of the Ascension sect. Just as Li Yuanfeng was about to flare up, Elder Yingyang stood up and stopped Li Yuanfeng. Instead, he looked at Zhuowen and said, "You said that you want to replace Lu Miaozhen and come with us? You are." Yingyang Yingyang, 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 and Elder. And Murmurong Yingyang Yingyang was surprised. Yuanfeng was Yuanfeng of Li Yuanfeng's Yingyang. He never thought that the outer disciple who had suddenly appeared would be the Zhuowen that the Nangong and Murong families had been looking for. This guy had really hidden himself well. Lu Miaozhen, whose face was originally numb, was immediately jolted awake when she heard the name Zhuowen. When she saw Zhuowen's familiar face, she could not help but cry. "Big brother Zhuo, you've saved me once again. I owe you too much. How am I supposed to repay you?" Elder Yuqi also revealed a moved expression. She had never imagined that Zhuowen would actually step forward bravely for Lu Miaozhen and be willing to take risks. "So, you're Zhuowen. You're really shameless. You stole the Murong and Nangong families' astral weapon fragments. After escaping, you actually hid in the Ascension sect to take refuge. You've completely disgraced the Ascension sect. Today, I'll expel you from the sect," Li Yuanfeng said coldly. "Haha. Sect leader Li, since this guy has been expelled from the sect, he's no longer a disciple of the Ascension sect. Then, the Ascension sect won't care if we take him away, right?" Nangong Haoge laughed loudly. Li Yuanfeng said indifferently, "The Ascension sect naturally won't care about a traitor like him. You can do whatever you want with him." Nangong Haoge was in a good mood. He strode toward Zhuowen and said, "Kneel down and surrender." "Didn't I say just now? I'm here to replace Miss Miaozhen. I'll go with you." "Why aren't you letting Miss Miaozhen go?" Zhuowen said calmly. "What right do you have to talk to me about conditions? Die." Nangong Haoge sneered. The aura in his body exploded, and a terrifying gale swept up. Nangong Haoge's cultivation was much stronger than Nangong Wuji's. He was actually at the late stage of the empty god transformation realm. Judging by his aura, he was probably much stronger than an ordinary cultivator at the late stage of the empty god transformation realm. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes. With his current strength, he was at most at the early or middle stage of the empty god transformation realm. The reason why he could defeat Nangong Wuji in one move was that Nangong Wuji had underestimated him. In addition, Nangong Wuji was too fast. Due to Nangong Wuji's carelessness, Nangong Wuji was defeated in one move. However, Nangong Haoge was different. He already knew that Zhuowen was not simple. Therefore, he would not underestimate him. Therefore, he would attack with all his strength. There was still a certain gap between Zhuowen and Nangong Haoge. Whoosh! Zhuowen's entire person was like a purple ghost, disappearing from the spot. "This guy is so fast." Nangong Haoge's attack missed. Then, he realized that Zhuowen had appeared beside Nangong Wuji and lifted him up. "Old dog Nangong, if you attack again, I will kill this guy," Zhuowen said calmly. "You dare?" Nangong Haoge was furious. "Let's see if I dare." Zhuowen sneered and crushed Nangong Wuji's right arm. Nangong Wuji woke up from the pain. He realized that his right arm was crippled. He screamed miserably and his eyes were filled with fear. You Let Wuji go. Nangong Haoge's expression changed slightly. Nangong Wuji was the son of the Nangong family's patriarch and the strongest genius of the Nangong family. Nangong Haoge could not let anything happen to him here. Zhuoan crushed Nangong Wuji's left arm again and said indifferently, "Let Miss Miaozhen go. Uncle, do as he says. It's too painful." Nangong Wuji screamed miserably. When Zhuoan crippled Nangong Wuji's arm, he used the power of his divine soul to amplify Nangong Wuji's pain. Even if Nangong Wuji's willpower was very strong, his nerves would collapse under extreme pain. Nangong Haoge's expression was gloomy. He released Lu Miaozhen's shackles and set her free. After all, his target was Zhuoan. Lu Miaozhen was not useful to him except for the spiritual water route. After Lu Miaozhen regained her freedom, she immediately went to Elder Yuchi's side. "Miaozhen, I'm sorry. Elder Yuchi apologized. Chapter 3773. On the main peak, in the huge open space outside the reception hall, Li Yuanfeng had his hands behind his back as he looked at the energy ripples that surrounded the sect. Li Yuanfeng sneered as he thought to himself, "Zhuoan, an arrogant person like you won't be able to escape from the Ascension sect. With Nangong Haoge and Elder Yingyang taking action, do you think you can survive?" Li Yuanfeng recalled how Zhuoan contradicted him time and time again. Endless anger rose in his heart as he wished he could kill Zhuoan with his own hands. However, Zhuoan was once a disciple of the Ascension sect. As the sect master, if he were to kill Zhuoan, it would make many disciples of the Ascension sect tremble in fear. The group of people following behind Li Yuanfeng all had complicated expressions. There were all kinds of emotions, such as pity, disdain, sneers, and contempt. "I've really underestimated this guy. I didn't expect Zhuoan to be so strong." Fan Jialiang was at the back. His gaze was the most complicated. This outer sect disciple called Zhuoan had given him too many surprises. He also felt that it was a pity. Zhuoan was so young, but he had such powerful strength. His talent was definitely not ordinary. If he could continue to stay in the Ascension sect, it would definitely be a blessing for the Ascension sect. Unfortunately, that Zhuoan was truly too conspicuous, and actually completely offended the sect master, Li Yuanfeng. "Look, Nangong Haoge and Elder Yingyang have returned." An elder in the crowd pointed at the two figures in the distance. Everyone looked over and saw Nangong Haoge and Elder Yingyang rushing over. The corners of Li Yuanfeng's mouth curled up slightly. He knew that the return of these two meant that Zhuoan was dead for sure. However, he didn't see the gloomy expressions on Nangong Haoge and Elder Yingyang's faces. Elder Yuchi and Lu Miaozhen's faces were pale as they smiled bitterly. After Nangong Haoge and Elder Yingyang returned to the main peak, they said to Li Yuanfeng, "Sect Master Li, release the mountain guarding formation now. We'll take our leave." After saying that, the two of them immediately packed up and prepared to leave. Li Yuanfeng revealed a look of surprise. Why did these two people seem to be in such a hurry? It was as if they were being urged by something. However, Li Yuanfeng couldn't say anything. He had originally activated the protective mountain array to trap Zhuoan. Since the two of them had dealt with Zhuoan, there was naturally no need for him to continue activating the mountain guarding grand array. At this moment, two more figures rushed over and landed on the main peak. Li Yuanfeng saw Zhuoan at a glance. He couldn't help but widen his eyes and blurt out, "Zhuoan? You bastard didn't die." After these words were spoken, the face of the black-robed old man standing beside Zhuoan immediately darkened. He coldly said, "Li Yuanfeng, you are becoming more and more outrageous. You actually call my disciple a bastard in front of me. How did you become the head of the Ascension School?" Only then did Li Yuanfeng notice the black-robed old man beside Zhuoan. His expression immediately changed as he froze on the spot. He didn't know why the black-robed old man had come to the main peak and was even protecting Zhuoan. "Why aren't you saying anything? This old man's words no longer have any effect on you, right?" The black-robed old man slowly took a step forward. A terrifying pressure poured out like a tide. In the main peak, everyone felt as if they were suffocating. They knelt on the ground, unable to move. Only Li Yuanfeng, Nangong Haoge, Elder Yingyang, and a few other powerful experts could barely stand. However, everyone could see that they were faintly trembling as they stood. They were horrified. They knew that the black-robed old man in front of them was definitely stronger than Li Yuanfeng and the other two. He was at least a 5 elements transformation expert. He is the guardian of the sinkhole. The head of the sect told us last time that this person is the ancestor of our ascension school. The elder kneeling on the ground secretly transmitted his voice. His heart was filled with bitterness. Plop. Li Yuanfeng knelt on the ground. His body trembled as he said, "Ancestor, Yuanfeng didn't know that you had come out. Yuanfeng knows his mistake." This was an existence on the level of the ancestor of the Ascension School. He had supreme power and authority. Li Yuanfeng knew that with just a word from the black-robed old man, his position as the head of the sect could be changed. "You know your mistake. Then do you know what mistake you have made?" The black-robed old man stood on the spot, but his pressure grew stronger. Nangong Haoge and Elder Yingyang secretly complained in their hearts. They knelt on one knee on the ground. The black-robed old man exerted the most terrifying pressure on them. Even though their cultivation was good, it was still difficult for them to withstand it. Li Yuanfeng's eyes flickered. He said in a low voice, "The protective mountain array is a great array that can only be activated when the sect is in a life-and-death situation. Yet, Yuanfeng activated it casually. This is against the rules of the sect. Ancestor, please punish me." The black-robed old man continued coldly, "What else?" Li Yuanfeng glanced at Zhuowen, who was beside the black-robed old man. He hesitated for a moment before saying, "This Zhuowen is a traitor of our Ascension School. I should be the one to capture him. I actually handed him over to the Nangong and Murong families. This is Yuanfeng's dereliction of duty." Bang! As soon as Li Yuanfeng finished speaking, the black-robed old man waved his sleeve. Li Yuanfeng groaned and fell to the ground. There was a clear red palm print on his right cheek. Ancestor, Li Yuanfeng was stunned. He had already admitted his mistake. Why did the ancestor still hit him? "Didn't I just say it? You insulted my disciple, and now you dare to slander him. I want to ask you, what are you trying to do?" The black-robed old man said coldly. Zhuowen's eyes flickered. He cursed in his heart. When did he become this old man's disciple? Disciple? Is he yours, ancestor? Li Yuanfeng finally realized that something was wrong. He glanced at Zhuowen, who was standing beside the black-robed old man, and his eyes widened. After the shock in everyone's heart, they felt much more relieved. No wonder this Zhuowen's cultivation was not high, but his strength was ridiculously strong. It turned out that he was taught by a powerhouse at the ancestor level. That's right. You keep saying that he's a bastard, that he's a traitor. Isn't that looking down on me? Li Yuanfeng, after becoming the sect master, your cultivation did not improve much, but your guts are getting bigger and bigger, the black-robed old man said coldly. Li Yuanfeng was so scared that his body trembled. He hurriedly lay on the ground and looked in Zhuowen's direction. He said in a low voice, "Junior brother Zhuo, I was blind. I didn't recognize that you were the ancestor's disciple. I hope junior brother can be magnanimous and forgive me this time." Li Yuanfeng changed his words very quickly. Since Zhuowen was the black-robed old man's disciple, they were naturally of the same generation. Therefore, he called him junior brother. "Zhuowen, Li Yuanfeng has already apologized. Now it's up to you to deal with him." The black-robed old man looked at Zhuowen with a smile. "Since Sect Master Li has already admitted his mistake, I won't be aggressive. However, I'll give Sect Master Li a suggestion. The Ascension Sect is a whole. As the Sect Master of the Ascension Sect, you should put the sect's disciples first. You shouldn't treat the sect's disciples as goods and casually trade them," Zhuowen said calmly. Li Yuanfeng hurriedly nodded in agreement. With the black-robed old man supporting Zhuowen, how would he dare to refute? "Senior, your sect's affairs have been settled. It has nothing to do with us. You can let us leave now. Chapter 3774. Before the black-robed elder could speak, Zhuowen spoke first. Is the Ascension Sect a place where you can come and go as you please? You came to the Ascension Sect and asked for your people aggressively. Now that you know you can't get your way, you want to leave safely? How can there be such a good thing in this world? Zhuowen said calmly. Nangong Haoge was furious and said, "Little bastard, what nonsense are you talking about? Nangong Wuji of the Nangong family was crippled by you. How dare you say that we are safe and sound? Are you blind? Nangong Wuji deserved it. If he didn't provoke me, he wouldn't be in such a miserable state," Zhuowen said calmly. Elder Yingyang was extremely calm. He looked at the black-robed elder. He knew that the black-robed elder was the one in charge. Zhuowen couldn't make the decision. "Senior, we are the Nangong family and the Murong family after all. Our previous actions were indeed inappropriate, but it's not to the extent that you need to keep us here," Elder Yingyang said in a deep voice. The black-robed elder remained silent. Zhuowen continued, "Don't worry, this senior won't interfere anymore. Didn't you come to the Ascension Sect for me? Are you willing to enter the life and death ring of the Ascension Sect? Once you enter the life and death ring, it doesn't matter if you live or die. The loser will die without regret." To everyone's surprise, Zhuowen proposed a life and death ring. Li Yuanfeng and the other elders were stunned. How arrogant was this guy? Although he had defeated Nangong Wuji was still a genius. Although he defeated Nangong Wuji, Nangong Haoge and Elder Yingyang weren't Nangong Wuji. Both of them were much stronger. How could this guy be a match for them? Wasn't he courting death? The black-robed elder frowned slightly. He wanted to stop them, but Zhuowen transmitted a message to him, telling him not to interfere and that he could handle everything. Although the black-robed elder was still worried, he couldn't say anything since it was Zhuowen's decision. This guy is crazy. Fan Jialiang covered his forehead. He thought that Zhuowen was courting death. Nangong Haoge and Elder Yingyang were startled at first, then they were overjoyed. They had indeed come for Zhuowen. They wished they could kill Zhuowen and seize the astral weapon fragments on him. Originally, because of the appearance of the black-robed old man, they thought that they had no chance. But now, this Zhuowen actually took the initiative to propose a deathmatch. Wasn't this a great opportunity? That's what you said. Nangong Haoge's eyes were filled with resentment as he spoke coldly. Of course. However, the life and death duel is a one-on-one battle. If you want to challenge me, then take turns. After saying that, Zhuowen took a step forward and swept towards the absolute sky cliff. Very quickly, he ascended to the huge life and death arena at the top of Absolute Heaven Cliff. Look, there's another person on the life and death ring. After Zhuowen ascended the life and death arena, he immediately attracted the attention of the disciples who were originally training near Tianju Cliff. Hey, wasn't that Xuanyan Xue? Back then, he had killed Niju and Nicai on the life and death arena. Now that he's gone up again, could it be that he's going to challenge one of the top 10 inner disciples again? It's possible. This guy's strength is so strong, yet he's still wearing the outer disciple's uniform. Logically speaking, with his strength, he should have long been an inner disciple. The disciples near Tianju Cliff discussed animatedly. They looked at the figures on the life and death arena with eyes full of doubts. They were all guessing who Zhuowen's opponent was. Hey, look, isn't that the sect master? There's also the great elder and many other elders. What's going on? The upper echelons of the sect seem to have all come. Could it be that they're here to watch the deathmatch? The surroundings of Tianju Cliff quickly quieted down. Many disciples saw Li Yuanfeng and the others who followed closely behind, and all of them were boiling with excitement. Old Dog Nangong, Old Dog Yingyang, have the two of you finished discussing? Who's going first? Zhuowen took out a blood spear from the outside world and stabbed it into the ground. He looked down at Nangong Haoge and Elder Yingyang below the life and death arena. His voice was like thunder, lingering above Tianju Cliff for a long time. At the same time, an extremely strong pressure was emitted from the blood spear, enveloping the entire Tianju cliff. What a powerful divine artifact! Could it be a heaven-breaking rank 4 divine artifact? This level of divine artifact's power is not something that an ordinary divine artifact can produce. The disciples were shocked, and their eyes were filled with disbelief. It's actually a heaven-breaking rank 4 divine artifact. This kid's wealth is actually so rich. Li Yuanfeng revealed a contemplative expression. He looked deeply at Zhuowen. Nangong Haoge and Elder Yingyang came together to ask for this kid. Now that he thought about it, there was indeed a huge problem. This kid probably had some other secrets on him, which was why the two families had mobilized so many people to ask for him. When Elder Yingyang saw the blood spear, the veins on his forehead bulged. This blood spear was the one that was snatched away by this kid after he was repelled by Zhuowen when he was besieging Zhuowen last time. Because at this moment, he was being condemned by the upper echelons of the Murong family and was in an extremely sorry state. Little bastard, this old man will come up and destroy you. There's no need for Brother Nangong to come up. Elder Yingyang stepped onto the life and death arena and landed on the other side of the arena. He coldly looked at Zhuowen. All the disciples of Heavenly Cliff were boiling with excitement. They looked at Zhuowen in disbelief. They had imagined that Zhuowen would challenge many people, but they never thought that it would be Elder Yingyang of the Murong family and Nangong Haoge of the Nangong family. These two people were famous experts in the Ji province. Their reputations spread far and wide, and they were also experts in the late stage of the Void God transformation realm. These experts were far stronger than the disciples. Even many of the sect's elders were no match for them. But this guy actually wanted to challenge these two people. Was this a joke? Then I'll destroy you first. Zhuowen coldly snorted and kicked the blood spear with his right foot. With a whooshing sound, blood spear was kicked into the air by Zhuowen. Then, it spun rapidly and landed in Zhuowen's hand. Bang! The moment he caught hold of the blood spear, Zhuowen went all out. A terrifying pressure surged out like a tidal wave. He turned into a purple shadow and disappeared from the spot. So fast. Most of the people in Heavenly Cliff were unable to see Zhuowen's figure clearly. They couldn't even see where Zhuowen was. This was because Zhuowen's movement technique was too fast. It was so fast that even their divine consciousness couldn't catch up. This was the true power of the merged Grand Mist movement technique. It was as fast as a swan. Elder Yingyan's face changed drastically. He quickly activated the shattered divine power in his body and formed a thick armor around his body. Although his cultivation was much stronger than Zhuowen's, his movement technique was far inferior. Even he could barely see Zhuowen's figure. Bang! 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 In the blink of an eye, several blood spear shadows appeared behind Elder Yingyang and slammed into his armor. The sound of metal clashing rang out. Elder Yingyang groaned and his body staggered. He almost lost his footing. At the same time, even more blood spears appeared and shot over from all directions. Like a prison, they all landed on Elder Yingyan's body. Poochie. Elder Yingyang let out a muffled groan as the divine armor on his body shattered. Elder Yingyang was shocked. Zhuowen's speed was much faster than before. How could he not know that this guy was still hiding his strength when he was fighting Nangong Wuji? At this moment, Elder Yingyang no longer dared to hold back. He took out the rank 2 astral weapon fragment he brought from the Nangong family, the ice bracelet. Chapter 3775. This is the power of a astral weapon, and it's a rank 2 astral weapon. Li Yuanfeng's pupils shrank to the size of needles as he muttered to himself. His eyes were filled with fear and dread. A rank 2 astral weapon fragment. Even their Ascension sect didn't have such a treasure, but Elder Yingyang actually took it out to deal with Zhuowen. Wasn't this too much of a waste? Many disciples of the Ascension sect were also shocked. Although they didn't recognize that it was a rank 2 astral weapon fragment, they could see that the ice bracelet Elder Yingyang suddenly took out was extremely terrifying. This guy, the black-robed old man's expression changed greatly. He took a step forward and planned to jump onto the life and death platform above the heavenly cliff. However, a terrifying gale swept over and blocked the black-robed old man. The black-robed old man looked at Nangong Hauge with a gloomy expression and said coldly, "Nangong Hauge, are you courting death? You actually dare to block me." Nangong Hauge had goosebumps all over his body. The pressure the black-robed old man gave him was too great. However, he still said unhurriedly, "Senior, your Ascension sect's life and death platform has a clear rule, right? Once you enter the life and death platform, it's up to fate. Senior, if you interfere with the matters on the life and death platform, wouldn't you be breaking the rules? Senior, although you're powerful and I admire you very much, I'm afraid it's a little inappropriate for you to take the lead and break the rules like this, right?" The black-robed old man stared at Nangong Hauge with undisguised killing intent in his eyes. Nangong Hauge wasn't wrong, but the black-robed old man didn't care so much. Zhuowen was the junior he admired the most and was also the most suitable candidate to complete his mission in the Wukong region. He absolutely wouldn't allow Zhuowen to fall on the life and death platform. Crack, crack, crack. At this moment, countless cracks began to appear on the life and death platform's ice domain that could freeze time and space. A mysterious purple light surged out and enveloped the heavenly cliff. In the end, the ice domain collapsed and Elder Yin-Yang grunted and appeared on one side of the life and death platform. On the other hand, Zhuowen was safe and sound and stood on the other side of the life and death platform. On his shoulder was a toad flickering with purple light. Hey! This Zhuowen's body also has a rank 2 astral weapon fragment, this. Li Yuanfeng was stunned. He looked at the purple toad on Zhuowen's shoulder in disbelief. The aura emitted by the purple toad was definitely not inferior to the ice bracelet that Elder Yin-Yang had taken out. No wonder the Murong clan and the Nangong clan joined forces to demand Zhuowen from the Ascension sect. They even brought along a rank 2 astral weapon fragment at all costs. It turns out that this Zhuowen also has a rank 2 astral weapon. They mustered such a large force to come here, all for the sake of obtaining this stage 2-star weapon. Li Yuanfeng revealed a look of understanding as he thought to himself. He looked coldly at Zhuowen and thought bitterly in his heart, this kid is really selfish. Hiding such a secret on him, he didn't contribute it to the sect but kept it for himself. This kid doesn't deserve to be a disciple of the Ascension sect. However, he didn't think that he had already expelled Zhuowen from the sect and didn't give any favors to Zhuowen. Yet, he actually wanted Zhuowen to contribute a rank 2 astral weapon fragment to the sect. He also didn't think that since this item was Zhuowen's secret, what obligation did he have to give this treasure to the sect? The black-robed elder's eyes revealed a bright light. He slowly withdrew his aura and thought to himself, this kid really gave me a lot of surprises. He actually hid his strength and has a rank 2 astral weapon. The black-robed elder's face was filled with gratification. He wasn't like Li Yuanfeng and the other higher-ups of the Ascension sect, whose faces were filled with greed. Finally taking out a rank 2 astral weapon, Elder Yin-Yang stood at the edge of the life and death platform and silently looked at Zhuowen and the purple toad on his shoulder. His eyes revealed a look of resentment. Back then, he had suffered a great loss because of the purple toad. Zhuowen stood in place and looked at the black-robed elder with a serious gaze. He finally knew why Elder Yin-Yang was so confident to fight with him again on the life and death platform after his previous defeat. It turned out that this old guy had also brought a rank 2 astral weapon. At the same time, Zhuowen glanced at Nangong Hauge, who was below the life and death platform. Since this person was the representative of the Nangong family, he probably also brought a rank 2 astral weapon. If he could obtain the rank 2 astral weapons from these two people, then his purple toad would be able to fuse with them again and advance to become a rank 3 astral weapon. Zhuowen's gaze was burning. He waved his right hand and the purple toad on his shoulder let out a low cry. It turned into an illusory purple shadow and quickly scuttled toward Elder Yin-Yang. Elder Yin-Yang sneered and took off the ice bracelet in his hand and threw it out. The intense cold air seemed to have solidified and exploded, fiercely colliding with the purple toad. Instantly, a terrifying energy ripple spread out from the life and death platform. It was the aftermath of the collision between the two astral weapons. And between the two astral weapons, there was a buffer zone. Zhuowen and Elder Yin Yang were standing there unscathed. Elder Yin Yang, when you didn't use the power of the astral weapon fragment, you couldn't keep up with my speed. You still can't keep up with me now. You won't be my opponent, Zhuowen said calmly. Elder Yin Yang's gaze was malevolent. He laughed and took out a red potion. He opened the bottle and poured it into his mouth. Instantly, Elder Ingyan's aura became unfathomable and vast. After consuming the potion, his aura had actually increased by 1-fold. He had entered the pinnacle of the Void God transformation realm. This is the Energy Awakening Potion. Consuming this potion can stimulate all the potential in my body for a short period of time. My current strength is not inferior to an ordinary pinnacle of the Void God transformation realm. Zhuowen, you little bastard. You're dead. I will completely trample you under my feet. After humiliating you, I will kill you. Elder Yin Yang's expression became more and more malevolent. He then stomped his right foot and the entire life and death platform trembled. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of Zhuowen. My speed has increased by a lot. Zhuowen's eyes narrowed. The corner of his mouth revealed a strange smile. Boom. Elder Yin Yang's fist was like a rainbow. It instantly pierced through Zhuowen's figure. However, he soon realized that what he had pierced through was only an afterimage. Then, he felt a terrifying gust of wind behind him that smashed into his face. Poochie. Elder Yin Yang spat out a mouthful of blood. Only then did he realize that Zhuowen had unknowingly appeared behind him and kicked him in the face. Your speed, how did it increase again? Elder Yin Yang held his swollen face and retreated to the edge of the life and death platform. He looked at Zhuowen in disbelief. After consuming the Energy Awakening Potion, his aura had increased tremendously. His speed had also increased by a lot. According to his estimation, his speed was even faster than Zhuowen's. However, he did not expect that Zhuowen's speed would increase. He was so fast that he could only catch a glimpse of his afterimage. It's not that my speed has increased. It's just that when I fought with you for the first time on the life and death platform, I did not use my full strength. Zhuowen's cold voice came from all around the life and death platform. It was as if there were many Zhuowen talking in all directions. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.